So this is a continuation from the morning. So we spoke about the two types of happinesses we can get. It is by pleasing your senses. You can get a short-term, temporary, quick burst of happiness, but it's not lasting, but it doesn't come for free. You need to work hard. So more than the few minutes of happiness you get, pleasures you get to pay the price. There's a lot of stress that follows that. Buddha said adinava. So Buddha is pointing out there is three ways of someone getting a kick or a pleasure: by entertaining kama vitharka, by entertaining vyapada vitharka, by entertaining himsa vitharka. I think last week we mentioned about this, or some time ago. There is a sutta called the Dveda Vitaka Sutta. In Dveda Vitaka Sutta, so Buddha is pointing out that these three types of thoughts are the thoughts that will bring emotions, that will develop all these five hindrances, and those are the unwholesome thoughts that will lead us astray from the real path to peace and happiness. So kama vitarka is the entertaining the thoughts about pleasing your senses, which we spoke a lot about this morning. Vyapada vitarka is the vitarka when there is an experience that you don't want to experience, you react to that, you hate it. So when you have these ill thoughts, hatred, anger, jealousy, these grudges, all these type of thoughts comes under that classification, hatred. So when you have this hatred, you entertain it, you get a kind of a kick too. So sometimes people get addicted to be angry, get angry. Because even though in reality it is doing a lot of damage and it's stressful and it brings suffering, but they're enjoying it. They're finding enjoyment in that. That's why they cannot stop getting angry. They cannot, even though if someone shows them, anger is not good, it's really damaging, it's not the way to solve problems. But they just keep on doing it because they think that's the way to live, because inside they find joy. And there is another pathway that gives us happiness in this wrong way, the wicked happiness. When you develop the himsa vitharka, cruel thoughts. So you develop cruel thoughts and you entertain that, you start to find kind of a joy by seeing others in miserable situations, others in pain, giving a hard time. And that's what I said about that, even the practical jokes, that's where it falls. Practical jokes are about you putting someone in a difficult situation and you laugh, looking at them, and they're trying to, resolve it, or they're trying to get out of it, or they try to, they get caught up in it, and you watch it and everyone laughs. So that is a cruel way of finding happiness. That is called the cruel, entertaining cruel thoughts. And watching wrestling, watching cockfights, watching two people fight and go to, cheer it. And it's just, we trying to get joy, finding joy out of others' misery. So there is this three ways of someone getting joy, but these three ways being a lot of stress, a lot of suffering, even though on the surface level it brings joy to someone. The kama vitarka, vyapada vitarka, himsa vitarka, all these three types of vitarkas, wanting to go after pleasing your senses, going after pleasures, pleasing your senses, going after the ill thoughts. So it's about being angry or being jealous or, in that way. And himsa vitharka is a cruel thoughts, putting someone down or you hurting them and finding joy. When someone is in a miserable position, you want to put them in that position, or when they are there, you start to find joy. So these types of happinesses are not good for the system, even though they give us some type of happiness. That's why we engage in this type of activities. If we didn't give us a kick, we won't be. We don't like it, then we will not engage. But because we find a kick, we entertain it and we continue it. That's where the problem is. So Buddha is pointing out this is a very low grade kind of a happiness, and it's not worth entertaining this because it damages you. Like one of the examples for kama vitharka, I'll tell you, wanting to smoke. You find so much joy and pleasure. I like to smoke. You smoke, it is burning, literally burning your lungs, literally burning your brain. And when the brain is damaged, it is damaging the whole lot, all the other organs. And like that. So it is, you can find joy by doing that stupid thing, but it damages you. So it's not worth to try to find happiness in that way. That's why it's called the wrong way. So Buddha points out, so when you try to please your senses, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, in that way, some of them you can see really it's wrong. Sometimes you can't see what is wrong with watching the TV, but that's what it exactly does. Like smoking, when you're watching the TV, when you're playing games, and what it does, the brain, the neurons have to fire so fast, and it really makes the brain tired. And when you're watching, you're interpreting it. Depending on your interpretation, you get emotional. So again, another level of damage comes when you're watching the TV with all these emotions activating you, internally. And it can even lead for you to get even cancer, not just high blood pressure, not just a heart attack, but even other big problems. So it's a silent killer. But watching TV, you can't see that. That's what can do to you. So this is why Buddha said it's good to refrain from these activities. So Buddha said in the true way, you can't get happiness, because even though it gives you a quick burst of happiness, there is a lot more damaging consequences following it. So the net result is actually, when you put it on a scale, the kick that you get and what you have to bear after that, the damage part, the bad part, is a lot more heavier. So it's not worth. And then Buddha points out there is another way to find happiness. So that kama vitharka, vyapada vitharka, himsa vitharka, if you're entertaining the ill thought, the thoughts about pleasing your senses, going after your desires, that's what it is, and try to find happiness. And entertaining the ill thoughts and finding happiness. Entertaining the cruel thoughts and finding joy. These three types, that is the thing that activates it goes via the sympathetic pathway in the stress cycle. So what you get is, even though it appears in the surface level happiness, what you really get is unhappiness, the misery, the tiredness and sicknesses, short life. And, no good things will come apart from that, just few minutes, quick, sharp burst of happiness. But a lot of damages long term. Some may not even leave you alone for this life, that some might even continue to the next life. That bad. The other type of happiness Buddha is pointing out, when you learn to give this up, that can bring you a greater type of a happiness. Nekkhamma vitharka means letting go of this fire, the training to let go of looking for this kind of low grade quality happiness also will do good to you. Instantly will relax you, will bring you peace of mind and happiness. Say for instance, now you're thinking of, you're a married man and you're thinking of a lady that you saw today, so nice and beautiful and you really like, but that one also married, but the mind is on fire thinking, no, I want her, I'm not happy with my wife, I want her. So your mind is on fire until you go after that and you get it. But if you can teach yourself, I have a woman, and if I can't be happy with her, those days my heart was on fire to get her. But now that I'm not happy, the same thing can happen even with this one. So this is something to do with I'm not being contented. So let me not go after this. Let me be content with my wife. And you just teach it that you drop that wrong thought, your heart will be at peace. Instantly, when you let go of that wrong thought, you will be happy, you'll be peaceful, and you will be happy. It will leave you alone. So it's like that, this kama vitharka, the thoughts of pleasing the senses, going after pleasures, when you drop it on the spot, nekkhamma vitharka means you letting go on the spot, you will find peace of mind and happiness. So that is a greater quality happiness. That has a great quality peace of mind. As a result of you getting this peace of mind, you will get happiness. And the other one is opposite of the ill thought, is the loving kindness. If you can develop gratitude, develop this with no attachment, it's not lust, but pure love, we call unconditional love and kindness, that quality, that will relax you. We call metta. In Pali, we call maitri karanavanam. That means if you can shave off your selfish tendencies, the self-centeredness, and you develop selflessness, and you start to think about everyone around you, not just you and your family, but the village, the country, and you go beyond that, the world, all beings. The metta means you developing your heart, opening your heart to all beings. So everyone is important to you. Everyone's welfare and well-being is important to you. Same like you think of yourself, you think of others. So when you develop this metta, that is opposite of the ill will. When you do that, your body will relax because it's activating the parasympathetic. So you will relax, and as a result of this relaxation, your stress responses really goes. It will lessen the stress response and decrease. So when people develop metta, this unconditional loving kindness, you have a delayed response of getting angry. So they don't get angry easily. That's what happens. And so more you practice this, more your mind will stabilize, more you can face a problem without getting angry. So you will have a lot of peace of mind. As a result of having this relaxation and peace of mind, you will be very happy. That's a good quality happiness that you will experience when you develop these things. I remember I was talking to Susanna just before, and she reminded me one of the things I showed them in a different session. And she asked me, who is that guy who said, 20 minutes of everyday loving, kind, compassionate meditation will change the brain to the good? I said, it's Matthew Ricard. So that is being proven now. If someone practices at least even 20 minutes of gratitude or loving kindness or compassion, altruistic joy, equanimity, whatever these good qualities, that has an effect in your brain. When you practice, you train your mind and purify the mind, it changes the brain. It will start rewiring, and it will even change the genes. The documentary we are going to watch is going to tell you, he's a neuroscientist, a doctor, but a neuroscientist as well, that they change, it goes down to this epigenetic level where when you change your thoughts, it can change your DNA. From the DNA level, it can change you, not even just the brain, the neurons, but even to the DNA. So, when you learn to let go of the ill thoughts and you learn to practice this friendliness, these good qualities, this coming from having less sense of self, or coming from this selfless path, humbleness, gratitude, loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, equanimity, all these qualities, when you practice, it will have a long-lasting effect, and it will decrease your level of anger, level of jealousy, level of anxiety, worries, level of, kalabalaveneka, shaking the mind, level of your sadness. This is the best medicine for depression. This is proven. Because it changes the brain. And then if you learn to let go of these cruel thoughts, you start to, you understand animal cruelty. When you are paying money and buying the fish and the meat and all that animal cruelty that goes, you see, now you associate it with when you go and buy it. So now you let go. Lot of peace of mind and happiness will come, knowing that you are not associating with this cruel industry. You're helping to save the lives. More you drop the demand, less they will kill. So, and this quality that we have, that we can enjoy while others suffer. These animals go through hell. They go through so much fear and terror and everything, and they die. We enjoy eating them. This quality is called the Schadenfreude. Hurting others, giving pain to others, and being able to enjoy. And this is what we do when we watch wrestling, when we watch the cockfights, bullfights. You do the practical jokes. That might be the mildest level, but it can reach. And then when you have an enemy, you plan, and you even at work and wherever you can get the time to get the revenge and all that, you will do things to put them in trouble or to give them a hard time, and then you enjoy seeing that. This type of thing is, there is two types of hurting and getting the pain. One is directed towards oneself, the one is directed towards the other. The masochism is called, when you hurt oneself, they will cut their hands, they will burn their hands with cigarettes, they will go and bash their head, do whatever to themselves. And it gives a lot of pain even to watch, for someone from outside to watch this, what they do to themselves. It's very painful, but they just do it. Why? They enjoy it. And this can be directed outwards. Do this to someone else, either mentally or by speech or even physically, whichever the level they can express it and put it to work. Then they will find happiness. That is called the Schadenfreude. So be finding happiness in others' misery. Now we are going the opposite way. We don't want that. So we want to now reverse it. Now we want to enjoy helping the helpless, helping the one who is in need, helping the one who is in trouble, helping the one who is in pain. When we do that, then we train ourselves to be happy by helping someone. This is called compassion. When there's something is in need, we go and help. And when someone is setting up some cruel thing to do to someone, Either we stop it or we remove from there, we don't engage in it. That is karuna, showing the compassion. So the opposite of the schadenfreude is showing the compassion, developing compassionate thoughts. So when you do that, you gain a lot of relaxation, peace of mind, and then happiness. So this is why Buddha pointed out, and in the Dveda Vitaka Sutta, learn to not to entertain these unwholesome thoughts, but learn to cultivate the good thoughts and develop them. So you will change the pathways in the brain, not finding low grade, low quality, not worth, the damaging type of happiness experiences. You will not go after that. You will give up this lesser type of happiness as pleasures to a greater type of happiness and the pleasure. So the greater type is activating this parasympathetic and developing this ability to let go of pleasing the senses, going after the pleasures, being able to let go of the ill thoughts, the jealous thoughts, the ability to let go of the cruel thoughts, and develop the compassionate thought. So Buddha is saying to develop thoughts of renouncing, thoughts of loving kindness, thoughts of compassion. So when you do that, your messages will go via the parasympathetic, and that gets transformed, and that will take you into more into the relaxation mode and more into the peaceful mode and to the happy mode. And this particular Hanson that doctor shows you that the effects of relaxation, how it's been proven that it even alters the gene, and from the genetic level, it actually decreases the stress response. So you will have a lot of peace of mind and happiness. This is how what happens when you practice the proper way, being able to take control of your thoughts and getting rid of the unwholesome thoughts and developing the good thoughts. How there will be a lot of changes in your brain, in your body. So it will help you to stabilize your moods. When you purify your mind, you will have stable mood, like very peaceful, calm and contented. And at the same time, that relaxation and the calmness and that contentedness will kick in a good quality happiness, that you feel very satisfied, very worthy, very happy. You don't need anything. I'm happy as it is. This is good enough. So you're not going after anything. So you're happy. All good. All good. So you don't need to look forward to go to the heaven, or you don't need to look forward to go here, go there, have this, have that. Now your mind is showing if you have that, you can be happy. So you are unhappy right now. Because that's why, to get rid of that unhappiness, when the brain is showing if you have that, A, B, C, you can be happy, you are trapped in that. So you're unhappy now. You are going to be happy after you get that. But if you remember, brain tricked you long time ago with so many of these type of things. But you're still unhappy, even though you went after it and got it, but now you're still unhappy. So this is what Buddha is showing, that you cannot ever find everlasting happiness by following these brain tricks, the mind tricks. You need to learn to be contented. You need to learn to let go of this wanting this, that, and the other. Sometimes it can even come in a disguised way, saying, I want this to do something good. Don't worry about doing something good with something you don't have. Like sometimes it can be like, oh, I want money, I want money, I want to do something good. Do something with what you have. So then you can find, when you let go of what you have, you will have peace of mind and happiness. But if you want something to do something, that's a different thing. Again, our greed is kind of blinding us. So Buddha is pointing that way, you really can't have happiness in that way. So if you are not happy now, you think I can be happy in the future. If you are not happy now, how can you be happy in the future by doing that act? There's no way. Why you're believing you can be happy in the future when you get that thing is because now you're not happy. So you know that. That's why you want happiness by getting that done. But from unhappiness, so where you are is at an unhappy point. So from unhappiness, you can't produce happiness. It is from happiness you can produce happiness. If you are happy now, you can be happy in the future. If you are happy now, when the brain is tricking us and saying, go and do this hard work and do this and do that and get this and get that, so you can be happy in the future, you can tell your mind, no greedy mind, you can tell to the greedy mind, no need, I'm happy now, so I don't need that to be happy in the future. I'm contented. This is why Buddha said, Santuttim Paramandana. Contentedness is the best wealth, the biggest wealth. You're rich now. You're happy now. So you don't need anything. Be happy with the clothes you have. Be content with the house you have. So you don't have to, break this part, that part, change this, change that. Sometimes when people's minds are so unhappy, because they are not getting the right good quality happinesses, they are only working on that short term, that happinesses that bring stress. So what is net result is the stress, so they are stressed all the time, so that's why they are unhappy. So to mask that unhappiness, they always want to do something. I have seen people, I've been to a house and this brand, like it looks like brand new tiles, so they may have put it long time ago, but it's being maintained nicely, and at that time they must have put the best quality one. So if you didn't tell anyone that it's being placed there 10 years ago, no one will know, which I didn't know. And I was surprised to hear that lady said, we are thinking of planning of changing the tiles. I said, why? It's been there for too long now. There's nice ones. So this discontentness is in the mind. Mind is not happy. Now you think by changing the tile to a new tile can make you happy. You don't know that even after putting this new tile, the unhappy mind, again after a day or 2 or week, it's going to be unhappy. So you will have to engage in another different project. Being contented means when the mind tricks you like this, you have to recognize, there's something in the mind, I'm not happy. So the unhappiness is disguising in this project. And you're trying to do that project and find happiness. So you have to tell the mind and say, no, nothing wrong with this style. So let it be. As long as, we can walk on it, it's not broken, it's nice, clean, let it be. If it'll do the job, that's it. So like that. So then see how much relief you get. Now you don't have to earn money to do that extra job. Your time, your energy, moving this, moving that, and getting the workers to come and going through the stress of the handyman or the contractors doing that, and the dust that comes when you do that, and all that. And you have to move the furniture and everything. Now, no stress at all now. If you can give it up, saying it's unnecessary, no need, I will work with my unhappy mind and I will make it contented. You don't need to go through any of that stress that was associated with that project. You're free from all that. Such a relief. Relief to the pocket, relief to the lungs, relief to everyone. Just can live there. So this is why it's very important to teach the brain and train the brain, train the mind. So all the time we need to train ourselves to value these good qualities: the contentment, the humbleness, the gratitude, patience, loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and this keeping your precepts, being virtuous. All these dasa paramita, they are the good qualities that we should be working on and developing. When you do that, you start to get sense of fulfilled feeling. So you can be happy with what you have. And in case, when the mind starts to play trick, then you can teach again, saying, no need. I will deal with my mind. And so look inside and you will see what is lacking in there, why it's not happy. Then you can work Go to the root cause and find out what's happening in the mind. You correct it then and there. That's only an internal surgery. You don't need to pay the hospital, don't need to pay a surgeon, no need to go through rehabilitation. You do it and you're free from that suffering that you're going to go through instantly. So this is what the proper meditation is about. Purifying the mind is about. You looking at yourself and correcting and getting rid of these unwholesome thoughts and developing the wholesome thoughts and developing all these wholesome qualities. So you can get a good, great quality happiness by activating this parasympathetic, and you can be so free from, running blindly, going after things blindly. All that physical, mental stress, you can leave aside. So there is this two paths of finding happiness. There is 3 types of thoughts that produces that in both sides, and it's on Veda Vitharka Sutta. So now the neuroscientists are talking about this. They have found out about this, and it's very interesting to see how the neuroscientists go about this and says, this is what happens when you think like this, when you think like this. This is how the brain changes, brain reacts. This is how your mood can change, and things like that. So it is really this. Normally when people say religion, they think it's something blind. You believe something blindly because someone said so. What the Buddha taught, the Buddhism is no, you don't have to follow blindly. There's nothing that you have to follow blindly. Everything is scientific. You practice it, you can explain. When you practice something and you yourself, if you know even about the brain, the body, the cells, the DNA, the genes, how everything works, you can connect this and you can see from inside out how this works. And Susanna was asking me, how do we know whether this is asad dhamma or sad dhamma? How it works on you. If you know you're getting more and more peaceful and happy, that is the sad dhamma. That is the truth. If when you're believing in some rubbish because someone said so, that is as the gospel truth, but you believe it and you go and kill someone believing you can go to heaven, it increases your stress, other stress. So it's not correct teaching. It leads to harm and suffering. So how do you know whether something is good or bad is when you apply it to you. Before you action on it, just apply it in a mental level, rehearse. You yourself will know how the pressure changes, how the muscle tone changes, whether it tenses, reacts, relaxes, the pressure goes up or it stays calm, or the mood, it gets agitated or it remains calm. Your thoughts, are they running wild like someone has dropped a bomb, scattered all over the place? Or it's calm and nice, contented. If you want, you can direct your thoughts and you can think. Otherwise, it's like a parked car. It's not moving. A lot of peace. So you will know it for yourself when you apply this. So the way to find whether something is sadharma or the asadharma is by applying it, and then you will know. So if it leads to I heard in that Buddha quotations, in one place she was saying, Buddha said not to believe just because it's in an old book, just because that book is believed by everyone, just because that's a respectable person who said that, like that. In the Kalama Sutta, Buddha says, don't just blindly believe just because of all these reasons. Believe in something. If you can, it makes sense that you apply it, it will bring peace of mind and happiness to others and to you. You can see that. You take that as a truth and practice. So it will not do any damage or harm to anyone. It will only do good to others and to you. Anyway, so let's watch this documentary. So this talk will tell you about these different kinds of happinesses and how we can find these different paths, and how the science is really backing what Buddha's being teaching. So this is not a blind belief, it's a scientific practice, really. This is just a very scientific practice, not a blind practice, what Buddhist practices. All right, so let's listen to this. You can have a piece of a pen and a paper. But anyway, I think first time you all should just listen. We can send the link. They can put it on the WhatsApp as well, and in the Zoom. So you can go and watch it later and have a piece of pen and a paper and write down, because what he says is there's a lot of important points, and you can link it to the Dhamma and you can understand the Dhamma directly. But if you're listening it to the first time, just listen it. If you start writing, your attention will be divided and you won't understand what he's saying. So if you're listening for the first time, just listen to it, pay attention, listen to it. You will see the connections of what I said, and when he's explaining things from the scientific background. Okay. Let it go.
Hello, good afternoon, my friends. My name is Meng. I'm the Jolly Good Fellow of Google. And I'm jolly today because our honored guest, Rick Hanson, wrote this book. Right? This book is about happiness, love, and wisdom. And it's about the neuroscience of happiness, love, and wisdom. And it's called Buddha's Brain. It's like all my favorite topics in one convenient value-sized package. It's like what's there not to like about this book? Right? That's why I'm happy today. Dr. Rick Hanson, he's a neuropsychologist, author, and teacher at the intersection of psychology, neurology, and contemplative practice. He co-founded the Wellspring Institute for Neuroscience and Contemplative Wisdom, and he's the author of the book called Mother Nurture, which is one of very few books that I am aware of, maybe the only book that is about taking care of mothers. And he's also an authority on how the arrival of children affect moms, fathers, and marriages. And Rick enjoys rock climbing, good conversations, and good books. And in his free time, he tries to save the world. So with that, let's welcome my friend, Dr. Rick Hanson.
With Meng here, I'm in good company. Can you hear me okay? How's the sound? It's okay. All right, great. And if it gets bad, please let me know. I wanted to say, first of all, that I've never been to Google before. I use your products many times a day, of course, but one of the great things about being able to be here is that gives me a little thing I can use to impress my kids. And that's very important when you're a parent. As you probably know or will discover, they're 22 and 19. And so this is one of the very few things that actually, made them pay attention to anything I had to say. So my intent here is to go through a number of topics, 4 in particular, and to do it fairly quickly. So my son, to put me at ease, said, "Don't worry, Dad, you're going to be talking to some of the smartest people on the planet." And thanks, Forrest. But in a way that's kind of good, because I do tend to zip along at a fairly breakneck pace. So my plan is to go through these topics kind of in 4 sections, pause for breath at the end of each one, do some few questions or comments, and then keep going. All right, I'm going to be working a lot at the center of these 3 circles: Buddhism, or really contemplative practice generally. The one I'm trained the most in is Buddhism. I'm not here to push Buddhism or any ism, but it's a source of great insight into actually how the mind works, as well as psychology and neurology. That said, I think it's humbling and appropriate to appreciate the fact that there's really literally so little we actually know about the mind and the brain these days. It's a nice quote here from Ani Tenzin Palmo. No one really still knows yet what a thought actually is, even though we're going to be talking about them a fair amount. Okay, so prelims out of the way, let's get into your amazing brain. First, some basic specs. It's kind of mind-boggling for me endlessly to appreciate really how complicated the brain is. In particular, I want to focus as an overarching theme on the fundamental idea of using the mind to change the brain for the better, so that it benefits the mind and in widening ripples, all beings. So to do that, I want to get first at some basic information about the brain and about what I call self-directed neuroplasticity, the fundamental idea that mental activity sculpts neural structure, which gives us opportunities increasingly to intervene actually inside the black box of the brain. That's important because there's a fundamental problem in that the brain, through biological evolution, is highly inclined toward noting and responding to negative experiences. And in particular, has a kind of deeply ingrained threat reactivity that's then increased by personal history, as well as cultural and political factors that leads to what I call paper tiger paranoia. And so then last, I'm going to talk about what to do about that with self-directed neuroplasticity in terms of coming back to the natural state of the brain, which is really the optimal brain. So I thought, this is my opportunity at Google. I'm going to take a big swing and, hopefully hit the ball. All right, so let's dive in. And one way to think about this is purely abstractly, fine. But a more powerful way to think about it is that what we're talking about is happening right here, right now, right between your ears. So here we go. Back to where we were, the technical specs of the brain. Kind of remarkable to realize that in roughly 3 pounds, about 5 cups worth of tissue, are about 1.1 trillion cells, 100 billion neurons, a trillion support cells. They're connected with each other in a variety of ways. A typical neuron connects with about 5,000 other neurons, making about 500 trillion synapses. Lots of information moves through the brain and the nervous system. The brain moves information around like a heart moves blood around, in effect. A fair amount of this, of the interaction between neurons is just noise. Noisy networks, as you all probably know, are optimized for signal transmission. But that said, out of all the noise, there are so many signals going on in the brain that in the time it takes roughly to take a single breath, roughly a quadrillion messages moved around inside your head. The brain is literally the most complex object yet known to science. More complex than an exploding star, more complex even than the American economy. So here's a schematic neuron. You can see the receiving end at the left as you face the screen. The output end is at the right hand side. It is like a little on-off switch. Neurons are continually firing. A neuron that's not firing is a dead neuron. And basically the summation moment to moment of roughly 5,000 inputs every few milliseconds determines whether the neuron will fire. So I want to talk now about 2 critical words that are really easy to lose. This is probably the most intellectually dense slide I've got. I want to talk about the mind and the brain. I define the mind as the flows of information through the nervous system. The nervous system has its headquarters in the brain. Information is represented by the nervous system, much like a computer hard drive represents information, or sound waves right now are representing information, radio waves represent information. It's the classic and familiar distinction between hardware and software. In essence, therefore, apart from hypothetical transcendental factors, the mind is what the brain does. No brain, no mind. Right? Now, I say the brain is a necessary condition for the mind. It's also a proximally sufficient condition. It's only proximally sufficient because the brain is embedded in a nervous system, embedded in a body, embedded in culture, and both here and now and across time. So to talk about the brain as the brain is the locally, it's a necessary condition, and it's the locally sufficient condition for the mind. And as we'll see, the brain also depends on the mind. Now, the way to understand the brain is really in a context of biological evolution. The nervous system is about 600 million years old. As you know, life came on the planet about 3.5 billion years ago. Multi-celled creatures arose around 650 million years ago, and they were complicated enough to need some method of communication between their sensing organs and their motor systems around 600 million years ago, thus the beginning of the brain. In terms of vertebrates, it essentially evolved more or less in the way you see. This is kind of a schematic picture. The inner reptile brain, and there's the squirrel monkey brain, and there's the early stone tool making hominid brain, the caveman brain, and the modern brain. The modern brain is essentially identical with the caveman brain. How many of you, by the way, have blue eyes or green eyes? Okay, you are mutants. In other words, until about 5,000 years ago, nobody had blue eyes. mean, biological evolution is continuing. The first blue-eyed person was identified probably about 5,000 years ago, probably around Denmark. And then blue eyes have proliferated around the world for various reasons. But evolution is continuing. So in terms of that evolution, the brain developed three fundamental goal-directed systems. So you could say they're motivational systems. This is why we do stuff, all right? The first system was the avoid system. Withdraw from threats, freeze, back up, get away. On top of that, then with roughly, invertebrates, crustaceans, lizards, and so forth, fish in the sea, a more sophisticated approaching system developed to pursue opportunities. And then with birds and mammals, and then primates and particularly humans, the attached system developed. That's the social system in the brain that forms connections and bonds with us and seeks proximity, closeness, intimacy, love, and belonging. Although the vagus nerve, as it evolved, loosely maps to these three systems, they're anatomically blurred in their distinctions in the brain, and they intertwine with each other, and any single system can use two others for its ends. This typology, by the way, approach, avoid, attach, or avoid, approach, attach, is one we'll be returning to again and again. And it's a really useful way to think about how people are motivated, and also think about how suffering and dysfunction and harm arise in terms of each one of those three systems. And also, on the other hand, how happiness, benevolence, and helpfulness arise in systems. So love in the brain, it's interesting to realize, and this is what's called the social brain theory, that probably the primary driver of evolution of the brain in the last 100 million years has been social capabilities, or love broadly defined. For example, reptiles and fish approach and avoid, they don't attach, right? They have their babies, they swim away. If the babies are still there a few hours later, they'll eat them in most species. Whereas birds and mammals do raise their young and often form pair bonds, at least temporarily. It's interesting that the brain developed in three major stages, driven really by the reproductive advantages, which is the engine of biological evolution, of social skills, if you will. The first stage was with birds and mammals. They've got bigger brains per body weight than reptiles and fish do, because the quote-unquote computational requirements of raising young and picking a partner require a bigger brain. Similarly, at the next stage of development, there is a correlation between the size and complexity of the social group of a primate species and the size of the cerebral cortex in proportion to body weight. In other words, the grooming, the hierarchies, who's up, who's down, who's alpha, who's beta, how can I still get some if I'm beta, the coalitions, all the rest of that, right? You've got to have a pretty big brain. All right. And then last, since the first hominids began making stone tools around 2.5 million years ago, the brain has tripled in size. They were smart enough to make stone tools. How many here can make a stone tool? I can't make it. I don't know, but they could do it. Wow, you maybe could. That's good. Most people don't raise their hand when I ask them that question. That's a good one. Yet the build out of the brain has been primarily devoted to social capacities. Language, cooperative planning, empathy, the presentation of self, both authentically and with artful deception and all the rest of that, has been much of what the volume of the brain, as I said, tripled. The other 2/3 is devoted to it. Interestingly, for babies or humans to have a bigger brain, there's a kind of physical limit on how big the brain can be in a newborn and still enable its mother to walk upright. And so you start hitting a limit there. Most species, primate species, there's basically a 2-to-1 ratio between the volume of the brain at birth and how big it eventually gets. The human brain, it's probably about a 4-fold, maybe even a 5-fold increase. To do that, we needed a longer childhood. To have a longer childhood with a very vulnerable infant, you needed to develop bonds between mothers and infants, and also bring fathers into the mix, and also the band itself, because it quote unquote takes a village to raise a child. And those requirements help drive the evolution of the social capabilities and inclinations that would enable that to occur, which then enabled bigger brains, and the advantages of those bigger brains, drove then increasing social capacities, and here we are today. So 3 facts about the brain in terms of self-directed neuroplasticity. All right, so first fact about the brain. As the brain changes, the mind changes. all right? In good ways and bad. Left is a good slide, hopefully, caffeine, sugar, pleasure, right slide on concussion, all right? The second fact about the brain is that as the mind changes, the brain changes. This is a critically important fact. In other words, immaterial mental activity, the movement of information through this hardware substrate, maps to material neural activity that produces temporary changes as well as lasting ones. Temporary changes include alterations in brain waves, increased consumption of supplies like oxygen and glucose, ebbs and flows of neurochemicals like serotonin, dopamine, other neurotransmitters, and so forth. Now I'm going to show you some slides of temporary fleeting changes in the structures of the brain or brain activity that map to mental activity. This is a slide of someone whose head's been kind of cut this way, and that's the caudate nucleus lit up because it's consuming more oxygen. It's a part of the brain that's involved in the reward center, and it activates in this particular study when college sophomores who are absolutely in love are shown a picture of their sweetheart. Male and female, they both get a major light up in the caudate nucleus. Right. I'm going to go through, by the way, a number of examples here. It's fascinating to get into some of the detail, but I'm going to keep us moving along. All right. Here's another slide that looks at envy and schadenfreude. This was a study done in Japan with college students who were told about someone very much like them who was spectacularly more successful. And in the scanner, what arose inside them were activations in the physical pain network. In other words, emotional pain, much as evolution. Evolution's a big kludge, essentially. It just uses lower systems and adapts them to higher purposes. So social pain uses physical pain as a fundamental basis. Similarly, social pleasure uses physical pleasure systems. So in phase one, they told these students that there was this spectacularly wonderful person who made them really look horrible, right? Envy, physical pain. And then in phase two of the study, they were told that this person encountered a humiliating downfall, schadenfreude, pleasure at the suffering of others. The pleasure network was activated. You can see an example in this study. Go. Here's another one. This is self in the brain. We were talking about this at lunch. In this study, basically, it's kind of hard to see maybe, but maybe not. The squares, the diamonds, and the crosses have to do with different activations of self-related activity in the brain, right? For example, recognizing yourself in a photograph distinct from others, or naming a personal memory like what I did last summer, or making a difficult choice. What's interesting in this picture is to see how widely distributed self-related activations are throughout the brain. There's no part of the brain that's special for I, for me, for ego, for mine. It's widely distributed. Which has some pretty profound implications. How about consciousness? The big Megillah, right? Well, again, when a person is conscious or is entering different kinds of consciousness, different parts of the brain are activated. And if you mess with those parts of the brain, intersect at the linkages between the thalamus, which is a central relay station in the brain, and the cerebral cortex, you anesthetize somebody, all right? On the other hand, as consciousness changes or activates, it uses different parts of the brain. Something as ineffable as awareness, right, alters or engages neural activity. Now let's talk about meditation. This is a slide. In this shot, the head is cut this way, if you will, of a Buddhist meditator doing compassion meditation. And the part of the brain that is activated there is called the anterior, which means frontal cingulate cortex, which is the part of the brain that's involved in the executive control of attention, staying concentrated and attentive. It also is an area where the thinking and feeling are brought together as well. So it's interesting to realize that when this person is in the scanner doing a kind of spacious, infinite, boundless compassion meditation, that this part of the brain is activated. Interestingly, this is a slide of Christian nuns in prayer who are doing a very different kind of spiritual activity, which activates some of the same region. ACC in the upper left-hand slide, left ACC, anterior cingulate cortex, lights up because they're focusing their attention. But also, interestingly, they got activation in the insula, which is a part of the brain that tracks the interior sensations of the body, which suggests that for these nuns, who are women, of course, doing that particular practice, it had a very embodied quality, which kind of makes sense intuitively. And also they got an activation in the caudate nucleus. Again, it was very emotionally rewarding to bring to mind their most profound spiritual experience. In essence, now I want to talk about lasting changes in the brain, because those were all temporary, fleeting changes, mostly having to do with which part of the brain uses metabolic supplies. Mental activity shapes neural structure. It leaves lasting residues behind. This is the essence of what's called neuroplasticity. It does it in a variety of ways. I listed some of the mechanisms of action. Busy regions get more blood flow over time. Existing synapses get strengthened. You also get, interestingly, altered gene expression. That's epigenetics. In other words, ineffable mental activity can alter the expression of strips of atoms inside this long chain of DNA. Right? For example, people who routinely activate relaxation training get improved gene expression of the portions of DNA that downregulate the stress response. Isn't that kind of amazing? To think that, doing this long, deep breathing or going to one of Meng's classes is actually going to alter the expression of this strip of atoms inside some molecule somewhere. It just is pretty far out. Classically, there's a line from the Canadian psychologist Donald Hebb: neurons that fire together wire together. In other words, when neural circuits or even individual neurons start associating with each other, the connections between them are strengthened. Okay, great. So this has a number of implications, and I want to show you a slide here, taking a look at people in terms of years of practice and looking at changes in neural structure. People who had a significant long-term practice, which has probably amounted to 20 to 40 minutes most days, the real world of Western practitioners, they actually had thicker cortical tissues in two key regions. One is the insula, that's number one, where they're tuning in to their body and their deep emotions and self-awareness in general. And also area number two is the executive portions of the prefrontal cortex that have to do with controlling attention. The third region is the sensory motor strip, where they were, tracking their body sensations. The interesting other finding is seen in the lower right-hand graph, where the blue circles were compared to those red squares. Red squares are the control group. They experience what's called cortical thinning with aging, normal cortical thinning. People lose probably by the time they're 80 about 3 to 5% of cortical mass. But the people who routinely used those regions, those are the blue circles, did not lose cortical tissue in those regions as a function of using it and not losing it. There are other examples. Some of them are quite, down to earth. I don't know if you've ever been to London. It's those spaghetti snarl streets. Taxi cab drivers who have to memorize the streets of London have a thicker hippocampus at the end of their training than they did at the beginning. The hippocampus is a part of the brain that's involved in visual spatial memory. Pianists who work routinely with certain kinds of movements have thicker, more motor cortices in the parts that control fine motor regions. In one study I read, it's very interesting. They took two groups of skilled pianists and they had them practice a certain kind of song or piece that involved certain specific motor movements. And they divided the group, and they had one group do it like 10 minutes every day, and the other group just imagine doing it 10 minutes every day. And each group had roughly equivalent build out of neural structure. Wow. Okay, so some perspectives here. Marvin Minsky, one of my favorites, probably well known here, probably a godfather of cognitive science, Society of Mind, a great book. Anyway, you see here he's saying the principal activities of brains are making changes in themselves. I want to offer a bit of perspective on this, which is that You know, neuroplasticity is not breaking news. It gets talked about a lot as if it's some new finding. No, it's been understood for 100 years or more that obviously mental activity had to change brain structure. What else is learning? The news is in the details. Most neuroplasticity is not dramatic. It's very, very incremental. Like, can you remember what you had for breakfast or didn't have for breakfast this morning? That's neuroplasticity. You know, what's the capital of Nebraska? Right? That's neuroplasticity. It's pretty humdrum. It's interesting, though, that even though neurons that fire together wire together throughout the nervous system, the ones that really wire together do so in the field of awareness. That means that residues of conscious experience are continually sifting into neural structure. Implicit memory is mainly where they do this. This is not memory for specific events. That's explicit memory for recollections. This is the internal felt sense of what it feels like to be me, action dispositions, biases, emotional residues, and all the rest. The point of all this, really, the takeaway, for me, there are half a dozen key takeaways, and this is one of them, is to really be a lot more thoughtful about what I experience moment to moment. Because whatever those neurons are doing, for better or worse, they're wiring together. You know, dwell in one's experience on themes of stress or tension or frustration or imminent failure or self-doubt and all the rest of that. Guess what? We're building neural structures of pessimism, depression, anxiety, lack of confidence, insecurity, inadequacy, self-criticism, etc. On the other hand, you know, rest experience and cultivate experiences that have a certain ease to them, a certain relaxation, never being more than 100 feet away from food, things like that. You know, that's going to cultivate neural structures that promote optimism, resilience, a positive mood, confidence, a willingness to reach high and take big risks. Right? Our experience really, really matters. Much of it is in the back. People don't really know what they're experiencing. That's why mindful self-awareness is so critical, or as Meng says, searching inside yourself. I'm really happy I was able to get that one in here. All right, so that's right. As I was saying earlier, most people are not very good at mindful attention. Attention is, you know, it illuminates what it rests upon and then sucks it into the brain. But for most people, that spotlight and vacuum cleaner is very safe. They're getting sucked into it's a problem. What are we going to do with this mindful self? The fundamental idea that we can use mental activity. Black box, so that it's increasingly possible to do reverse engineering. In other words, to identify what is the neural substrate in the black box of optimal states of functioning, happiness, relationship, stress relief, and all the rest of that, and then use mental activity alone, not medication, not, you know, electroshock treatment, but mental activity alone to target those neural substrates and build them out in increasingly skillful ways. And that's the opportunity. And by the way, it's an historically unprecedented one. The knowledge about the brain has essentially doubled in the last 20 years. I mean, we live in an historically extraordinary time for many reasons. This is certainly one of them. And it's also historically unprecedented in the coming together of those three circles, you know, that I talked about previously: psychology, neurology, and contemplative practice. The contemplatives being the Olympic athletes of mental training for, you know, millennia. And so I'm really excited about this. You know, we're just at the beginning of it all. I think modern neuroscience is roughly where biology and medicine was about 100 years after the invention of the microscope, which is to say about 1720. Where is it going to be, 300 years? Okay, so let's talk about some of the challenges now. What are we going to do with this self-directed neuroplasticity? We've got to deal with the negativity bias. This is a really, really critically important slide. In other words, in our evolutionary history, we had to track carrots and sticks, right? Approach carrots, avoid sticks. That's really important. But for survival purposes, in very harsh, frequently lethal environments, sticks are more salient than carrots. In other words, if you miss a carrot today, you'll probably get a chance at one tomorrow. But if you fail to avoid a stick today, wow, no more carrots forever. So the brain responded, because Mother Nature is a harsh teacher. Whatever confers reproductive advantages, that's what gets built out in the brain. So there are a number of ways this is done. I've listed just a few. For example, the amygdala, which is the alarm center of the brain, is primed to flag negative events. Probably about 2/3 or more of its cells are dedicated processors, if you will, for negative information or potentially negative information. And then the amygdala and the hippocampus, which are very close to each other. The hippocampus does visual spatial memory, but more broadly, it does memory for context. Rapidly flag anything that's remotely negative, stored, and retrieve it on a fast track. All right. The bottom line is that the brain is like Velcro for negative experiences, but Teflon for positive ones, unless it's the $1 million moment. So in effect, of those three systems, avoid, approach, attach, the avoid system is very fast in that reptilian brain, if you will, and it routinely hijacks the approach and attach systems and puts them to its bidding. And therefore, as a result, in the title of a very famous paper, bad is stronger than good. By the way, I'm going to post these slides on my website, and you'll be able to access them if you want. And at the end of them are a bunch of excellent books, as well as a number of papers and the references for this presentation. Okay, so what are some examples of bad being stronger than good? In relationships, on the average, it takes about 5 positive interactions to even out a single negative one. All right. What's the history of the last 3 days in your intimate relationships, with family members, lovers, or children, right? It's quite cautionary to think about that. Or alternately, people will do much more to avoid losing a loss than getting an equivalent gain. In other words, people will work harder, or they'll put up with more electrical shock to avoid losing $100 you gave them in an experiment, then they'll work hard to get $100 you put on the table, but they got to fight for it, right? Or last, it's really easy to make people feel helpless. In dog studies, for example, who have a limbic system, an emotional system very much like our own, you can train a dog in helplessness in about 5 trials. 5 cycles where bad things happen that they have zero control over, roughly, you can train them in helplessness. And then it takes dozens, even 100 or more trials to untrain them. And the parallels for human beings are much the same. That's why I think it's really important to pay a lot of attention to feeling helpless and a sense of futility, and to work really hard to not feel that way. And if nothing else, redefine the game into one you can actually win at, where you actually do have efficacy. Now, this question naturally arises here. Yeah, but isn't there some good with negative experiences? Well, sure. Okay. Remorse keeps us kind of on the path of virtue. Sorrow opens the heart. Negative experiences can increase resilience and all the rest. But walk downtown or walk around this campus, which is a pretty rarefied environment. Look at faces. Look at my face. You can see the suffering in faces. Is there any shortage of negative experiences in the world? Is anyone here? Would you like more negative experiences? We can give you some of ours. Any volunteers? I've never had a volunteer yet, who'd like more negative experiences. All right. So what are we going to do about this? Now, negative experiences, it's important to realize, have significant mental and physical health consequences. I'll just zip through this slide. I won't get into the detail of it, but chronic stress is one of the main results, because when we're upset, our stress response systems are activated. All right. getting angry, even just irritated, getting nervous about something, feeling depressed, feeling ashamed or inadequate or alarmed in any way, shape, or form triggers the fight-flight response systems through the sympathetic nervous system. And HPAA stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the endocrine system, in other words, because the nervous system and the endocrine system work together in terms of stress response. It's pernicious. Chronic stress is the enemy, particularly for people who are interested in living past 35. In other words, unlike our great-great-grandparents in the caveman days, most of us want to live past, 35. What kind of life are we going to have? The slowly accumulating impacts of chronic stress were pretty irrelevant on the Serengeti 3, 5, 1 million years ago, but they're very relevant today in modern times. So, how would you like to do something experiential for a minute or two? Get out of this head stuff for a second. So now that I've given you the bad news, and I'm going to give you more bad news in a minute, I want to talk about self-compassion for a moment. This is a hot area of research. A lot of the benefits of self-esteem actually boil down to self-compassion. Arguably, self-compassion is more powerful, partly because it's so emotional. Self-compassion is not self-pity. It's taking a moment, and it's usually, typically less than 10 seconds, to just have a sense of, wow, that hurts. This sucks. That doesn't feel good. I wish it was better. It is. Pause, then suck it up, right? But first it is self-compassion phase. People just suck it up and move on without having done self-compassion first. They haven't fueled themselves in a deep way. Well, self-compassion is actually quite hard for many people. So as a little of this reverse engineering idea I talked about earlier, that's right there. I'll do it right now. This is private. You don't have to do it. All right. You can think about anything else. You could even really get involved in self-criticism and self-loathing, but that's really up to you. Okay. So first step, bring to mind a sense of being cared about by somebody. Could be a pet, a grandparent, someone in your life today, a spirit entity, a group of people. Just the felt sense. What's it feel like to feel cared about? All right. Second, and you can go at your own pace or not do this at all. Bring to mind also someone that you naturally feel compassion for. In other words, you naturally wish that they not suffer. And you have an attitude of tender concern. Maybe a child, a dear friend, relative, a group of people, starving, refugees somewhere, whatever. Third step, this is a mindfulness practice now. Sink into the experience of compassion in your body. What's it feel like? Stay present with it. And then come from that embodied felt sense of compassion to yourself. With a sense of the ways in which life is hard. It's not perfect. You might combine it with some verbal inner language like, may I feel better? May I feel better about this thing? May it go better for me with that, man or woman in my life? May I not suffer? Okay, great. I guarantee you, if you did it, you lit up neural circuits of self-compassion. And every time you do this, it doesn't build much structure, but it builds a little bit of structure. And if you do it routinely, over time, those neurons fire together, therefore they wire together, and you're building the neural substrates of self-compassion. All right. So now let's get into some more bad news. I want to talk here about threat reactivity and paper tiger paranoia. If you think about it, there are two major mistakes we can make in life. On the one hand, we can think there is a tiger in the bushes when there isn't one, okay? On the other hand, we can think there's no tiger in the bushes and it's all fine, but there really is one about to pounce. Now, we evolved to make the first mistake 100 times, 10,000 times to avoid making the second mistake even once, because that's how you stop having gene copies, all right? This evolutionary tendency which is deeply ingrained in people to be threat reactive, is then intensified by temperament. Some people are more anxious than others. Then life happens, personal history. Then you have culture. And then you have political manipulation. It's a classic story, obviously, throughout human history to build up a sense of external threat or even internal threat. And on the basis of that, get more compliance from the populace. I mean, that story has been told 1,000 times or more in human history. This threat reactivity happens at the individual level, happens inside me, happens inside you, it happens between people, like in a relationship within a family, happens at the level of organizations. It's interesting to think about how that may or may not be happening at Google and how you've taken wise steps here to stop it from happening. And it obviously happens at the national level and the international level, the level between nations and the world altogether. This has a lot of implications, really, if you think about the current moment in world history. What are some of the results of this threat reactivity, both at the individual, organizational, and national level? First, initial appraisals are mistaken. There's a tendency to overestimate threats, underestimate opportunities, and underestimate resources, either for coping with threats or for capturing opportunities. We tend to update these appraisals with information that selectively confirms them, and we tend to, through the mechanisms of what's called cognitive dissonance, we tend to ignore, devalue, or alter information that doesn't fit these pictures. Thus, we end up with views of ourselves, other people, and the world, and the future and the past that are ignorant, selective, and distorted. Any comments or questions so far? That's the bad news. Now the good news. Actually, there's more bad news. I apologize. I turned the page too quickly. My mistake. I was eager to get on. So I thought to myself, you know, what's a short list in one slide of the major costs of threat reactivity? You could probably add a few items to this list with a little thought. For one, feeling threatened feels bad. As soon as we feel threatened, activates the stress response system. We start getting stress hormones. We start focusing around the threat and with all the consequences I talked about before. Feeling over-threatened makes people over-invest in threat protection and not invest in things like raising kids or schooling or building infrastructure or making long-term plans. Then you've got the story of the boy who cried tiger. In other words, if people feel flooded with threats that are actually not real or are overstated or are easily managed by one thing or another, it's easy to miss the needle in the haystack of the actual threat that's really important to think about. I think that's one of the things that's happened with things like global warming. People are so caught up in, this endless list of, murders on the evening news and, a sense of global threat all around us, and that they miss long-term things that are actually going to be very consequential. If we act when we're threatened, we tend to overreact. That creates cycles in which other people feel threatened and confirm our worst fears. The approach system gets inhibited when people feel threatened, when the avoid system activates. So we tend to not pursue opportunities or we play small, lose our nerve, or give up too quickly. And then the approach system the attach system is put in the service of threats. People tend to really bond with us. They increase their sense of fear and anger toward them, and they put up with more mistreatment within us, to protect me, strong father figure, if you will, from them out there about to get me. Obviously, threat reactivity, you can think of it on the global scale, or even inside this country, red state, blue state, or even more locally in terms of different groups of us's and them's. Threat reactivity is a major source of prejudice, oppression, and war. And if we want to make this world a better place, helping people see through paper tiger paranoia is a fundamentally profound and powerful way to do that. And my little hope is that Google will in some ways, help that happen. So now let's talk about the optimal brain. Let's talk about how to deal with this kind of paper tiger paranoia. And these, by the way, are practices and tools you can use in your own personal life, and I'm going to talk about them. So think about reverse engineering. What's the state of the brain in peak performance modes, peak productivity, or in a state of, let's say, self-actualization, or enlightenment even, or close to it? Clearly, there have been many people throughout human history that have been in these states. Many of us in this room, probably everybody in this room, has gotten into that zone at one time or another. What in the world could be happening in the brain, when a person is in that zone? Well, the home base of the human brain, which alas, we are so easily driven from, is characterized by, I call them the 4 C's: calm, contented, caring, and creative. And you can see how calm, contented, and caring map to the 3 systems, right? Avoid, approach, and attach. And creative, generative. People are generative. Obviously, it's extraordinarily generative here. People are generative in particular when they go into the zone of calm, contented, and caring. This is the brain in its natural, let's call it a responsive mode. It's not offline. It's not anesthetized. It's engaged in the world, it's embodied, and it's inactive. It's continually leaning forward into the future, but it does so in a particular mode of operation. To look at it in a schematic, you can see this triangle here in which the 3 systems, and by the way, this graphic comes from a little earlier form of this material in which I called the attached system affiliation system. You can see the way in which the brain operates, your brain, my brain operates, our brains operate when we're in this natural state. Problem though, is that to survive, we leave home. In other words, on a hair trigger, Mother Nature has given us the capability of activating any one of these 3 systems, or all 3 of them in concert, in a different kind of mode. Call it a reactive mode that then drives us from home. It's a kind of inner homelessness. In other words, when people feel threatened or harmed, they're in the reactive mode. When they can't attain important goals, they're frustrated or disappointed, reactive mode. When they feel isolated, abandoned, devalued, they're not getting the healthy, normal narcissistic supplies they need. When they feel left out, dissed, shunned, and so forth, that also triggers this reactive mode. And it too has a number of consequences. So here's a little slide that summarizes it. All right. So those are the choices, really. Reactive mode, which is the ordinary experience. Look at the front page. It's all reactive mode. Watch the evening news, mostly reactive mode. A lot of life. Think about dealing with some issue with an intimate, a friend, a partner, a family member. As they say in the spiritual biz, think you're enlightened? Go visit your parents for the holidays, right? What's it like in the real world? What's it like in traffic when someone flips you off? What's it like when the person you like least as a political figure is yapping away on the evening news, right? What happens then? We easily get triggered into this reactive mode. So now what to do about it? How to come home? How to recover the fundamental, natural, responsive mode of the brain right in the middle of the trenches, not in a cave in Tibet, not in a monastery, but in daily life, one step at a time, one breath at a time. As the Tibetans say, if you take care of the minutes, the years will take care of themselves. So how can each one of us take care of the minutes in our own life, or help others take care of the minutes in their lives so that the years will get better and better for this planet? Well, first I want to talk about 3 fundamental pillars of practice that show up in contemplative traditions, as well as in Western psychology: mindfulness, virtue, and wisdom. And by different terms, you see these again and again and again. And I think that's because they map to 3 central functions, arguably the 3 central functions of the nervous system, which is to say, receiving and learning, okay, regulating and prioritizing, which map very closely to mindfulness, virtue, and wisdom, and which also map to the 3 fundamental phases of any kind of personal growth or emotional healing, which is to say, open up to it, experience it, be with it, be mindful of it. Second phase, at the just right moment, help it move along, release that negative stuff. And then third phase, when there's a space there, replace it with something better. Or in 6 words, let be, let go, let in. And the reason I think that these fundamental pillars of practice are found again and again, including in traditions that were certainly pre-technical, is because they map so closely to the universal human nervous system. As a takeaway point at the bottom, mindfulness is vital, but it's not enough. Mindfulness needs to be matched with virtue, with values, and with wisdom, some fundamental understanding. Somebody wants to find wisdom as giving up a lesser pleasure for a greater one. I mean, it's that clarity about what is the greater good here that I'm going to sacrifice this lesser pleasure for. I mean, that's wisdom. Additionally, I want to talk, there's some general factors for the responsive mode that I just want to call to your attention here. If you want to drop your brain into its natural state of calm, contented, caring, and creative self-compassion, getting on your own side. So many people are not on their own side. You know, in other words, they're not for themselves. It's so interesting to think about it. That's a critical moment to actually say, no, how it feels to be me matters. My brain matters over time. I'm going to be for myself. I'm going to try to do little things every day that will build a better brain or other aspects of my life gradually over time. Mindful self-awareness I've talked about, seeing the world clearly. I think Google has helped enormously here, and it can continue to help in the future, particularly by appreciating the depth of threat reactivity, the depth of the paranoid trance and the insidiousness of it. Taking life less personally, appreciating increasingly that it's not really about me. And one particular practice, which is the chapter in my book, Buddha's Brain, and will probably be very central to the book I write after the one I'm writing now, is taking in the good. And so if we could, I'd like to do a little practice here with you about taking in the good. Because if you think about it continually, the brain is taking in the bad. Remember, it's like Velcro for negative experiences, Teflon for positive ones. It has dedicated systems that just suck any kind of negative information into the brain. Think about 100 things happen in the course of the day, right? 70 are pretty good, 28 are neutral, 2 are kind of sucky. What are the ones you think about as you fall asleep? Usually it's the stuff that was a drag, right? And that's the brain. It just wants to grab hold of that. That's why using mindful awareness for about 20, 30 seconds in a row can actually build out neural structure in a much more positive way. So if you'd like, let's do it together. And you don't have to do it, but let's give it a crack. So first off, first step, pick a positive fact. It could be, I particularly like picking a positive fact about a good quality inside yourself. All right, wherever you go, there you are, right? Or you can think about a good condition in the world or a good event recently. Someone was nice to you, some good thing happened, and then let yourself really feel it. All kinds of good facts occur, but we don't register them. They don't move the needle. But in this case, we're helping ourselves because we're on our own side to let ourselves feel good. It's a private act. No one needs to know you're doing it. There are lots of taboos about feeling good, feeling happy. You can hide it behind your face, but let yourself feel good. And then in particular, in the second step, savor it for 15, 20, 30 seconds in a row. Stay with feeling good for a quarter of a minute. And as you do it, sense and intend that this good experience is gradually sifting down into you. It's sinking in and even perhaps filling the hole in your heart, gradually soothing, even replacing perhaps old places of pain. Or at a minimum, simply being a moment of good experience. And that's it. Now, any single time you do this won't make much difference. Half a dozen times a day, continually looking for opportunities to take in the good, to make your brain like Velcro for positive experiences, will make it like Teflon for negative ones. And over time, everyone I've ever worked with who's done this, within a week or two, people start feeling different. Within a few weeks and certainly a few months, quite radically different. This is also a fantastic method for children, particularly kids at either the spirited or anxious, rigid, ends of the temperamental spectrum. Jackrabbits and turtles, right? They're all normal. There's no disorder there in jackrabbititis. It's a normal temperamental variation, but it's tough to be a jackrabbit in the turtle culture in some ways, certainly in turtle schools. So anyway, taking in the good for a few moments just before bed is a great way to fill the heart of kids. And I'll use metaphors with them like putting a jewel in their heart and so forth. All right. It naturally comes up, of course, why do this? Which is an interesting question, like what a taboo right there on feeling good. Benefits of positive emotions are kind of a proxy for the benefits of taking in the good. There's a lot of research on positive emotions. I'll just leave that slide there for a moment. But positive emotions, wow, have fantastic benefits. Happiness really is skillful means. If you take a look at my website, wisebrain.org, you'll see the slide sets for a number of talks. And one of the nice things about positive emotions is they steady the mind, because they do it in various ways having to do with dopamine and working memory. But it's a great way to support concentration and productivity to encourage positive emotion. Also, it comes up, whether it's selfish to feel happy. I think Bertrand Russell had a fantastic line here. He pointed out that, as he conceived of it, right, the good life is a happy one because happy people are good people. There's a lot of research that shows that, with some significant exceptions, people who have basic well-being, who already have a sense of overflowingness inside themselves, are more inclined to offer benefit to other people. So from the standpoint, obviously, of productivity and reducing turnover and anything like that, whether it's at Google or any company in the world, helping people feel happy at work is a great way to promote productivity and generosity and teamwork and team building with other people. All right. Moving to an end here, and then hoping to have a few more minutes for questions and discussion at the end. I also took a look at specific factors that may not be so obvious for activating the responsive mode of the brain for each one of these three fundamental systems. In the approach system, for example, focusing on gladness and gratitude, fantastic. People do things like the 3 blessings exercise at the end of the day. They just list 3 things to be grateful for. Take half a minute to focus on them. That has had amazing results for such a simple intervention. And giving oneself over to one's best purposes is another way to activate the approach system in a context of prior contentment and wisdom. The affiliating system, one I want to call out there is the last one, the idea of acting with unilateral virtue. In other words, living by your own code of integrity and good conduct, regardless of what the other person does. In other words, not getting involved in this kind of, Mexican standoff. I do couples counseling as well as other things, where people basically say, I'll treat you well if you treat me well. You go first, right? And we know where that really gets us. On the other hand, if you act with unilateral virtue, makes you feel good right off the top. It also gives you a sense of initiative, and it puts you on the high moral ground so that after a few days or weeks even, you can then say very rightfully to the other person, I stopped being a jerk. I'm giving you what you want. I'm lining off your reasonable complaints. All right, how about me? Okay. And then last, with regard to the avoid system, calming the body in general. As soon as we get activated in the stress response system, we're primed to go negative because those systems are disposed and lean toward negative responsiveness. So activating a calming, soothing response whenever we feel stressed or upset is a good basic default. And then I would say last, tolerate risking the dreaded experience. We live small. We live in a way to avoid experiences we dread. And then that becomes the new normal. And after a while, we start to forget about it. It's a little bit like these tigers that are in cages. Speaking of tigers, they remove the cage because they built a park around them. The tiger will not cross the line that's written, that's painted there on the cement because they still live within that box. They still presume that limitation. The trick is to risk the dreaded experience instead of avoiding it. In other words, put one's neck out in a meeting. Tell someone you love them. Open up to some feelings and see that it goes well, which it usually does. Okay. In effect, this is, in the traditional phrase, taking the fruit as the path. In other words, taking the end as the means, taking the end of calm, contentment, and caring, or here in this, I reordered it, gladness, love, and peace, taking that as the method as well as the destination. For example, literally, I found myself increasingly, I just named these 3 words to myself. I did before I came down here to do this talk, which was making me nervous. I said, Rick, gladness, love, peace, okay, good, in the zone, okay, good place, right? Whatever works for you to get in your zone. Different things work for different people. All the great teachers have offered huge toolboxes with a diversity of tools. Neurological diversity is the most critically important and fundamental and substantive kind of diversity there really is. And so that's why I think it's really important to find one's own way. That gives us a fundamental choice, right? Reactive mode, which is the ordinary lot characterized by suffering, ignorance, and harm, or the responsive mode, the natural state of the brain, which can see through paper tiger paranoia and can be gradually cultivated with self-directed neuroplasticity. And that's the opportunity for us all today. It's historically unprecedented. It's grounded in science. Papers are coming out every day, basically, with new opportunities to figure out how to reverse engineer the brain. And each one of us can do this in our own lives with benefits that ripple throughout the entire planet. So I thank you for your attention. It's a great privilege to be here. Thank you very much. Question or comment for the last minute? One? Yes, no?
A question about, I've heard that a number of traditions anyway say that if you're trying to make a change in your consciousness, when the point comes when you can actually make a shift, there will be an opposite, there will be a resistance, there will be like a pull from where you came from that will try to keep the status quo. How does that, is that known as an actual, something that happens in the brain that tries to keep us in our previously more contracted consciousness?
I think that's true in two ways and wonderfully untrue in a third. All right. First, the brain is a giant association network. Everything's connected to everything else. So if we have a breakthrough over here, we still have that old learning over there. People say to me sometimes, I feel guilty that I'm still upset about my childhood, right? Well, of course you are. You know, the brain learned. It's designed to learn, and that learning persists until it gradually is replaced or overcome. First. Second, it's very interesting how the brain is organized. It's very much basically yin and yang. In effect, stop and go, you know, inhibit or fire. That's the way the brain is organized. And I think a lot of knowledge structures in the brain are organized around figure and ground, or something in its, you know, thesis, antithesis, in effect. So when you break through in one area or you think about something, very often the opposite comes up. For example, think about something that makes you feel proud of yourself. Pause. Very often something will come up that's associated with self-doubt. So what you're saying, I think, is natural. That said, very often people will have a breakthrough and they get a release. They're done with it. They saw through it, they changed, they got it. I love the line from practice: gradual cultivation, sudden awakening, gradual cultivation, sudden awakening, gradual cultivation, sudden awakening. So very often what we have is we have awakenings, we have insights, we realize something, then we've got to cultivate around it. We've got to backfill, we've got to build an infrastructure, which then enables the next awakening, the next insight, the next breakthrough, the next release to be even deeper. But something I've really come to see, honestly, I've been a therapist a long time. It's made me more compassionate, but it's made me tough as nails, in this sense that most people will not do the work. But if you do the work, the sky's the limit in the changes you can make in your mind, your brain, and your life, and in this world. Okay, thank you.
We'll come back to you. What about Arundhati?
Yes, Mehanin Hanson, what is it?
You're there away.
I didn't sleep. It was very interesting.
Good. So ask some questions. I'm sure you should have some questions.
Well, I was surprised by the fact that he said that we suck in the bad experiences.
That's
that,
right.
Yeah, the brain has a great affinity towards that, but that with practice we can change it. So that was something very interesting, because I suppose it comes with survival of the fittest and natural evolution, that we understand like bad things that happen to us and then protect ourselves and therefore generate negative emotions, thoughts, whatever. But at the same time, that it is very possible to change all of it with practice of compassion, all the good things like what we practice in our faith. So that was very encouraging to listen to, to see it in a scientific perspective. So that was something new to me. I didn't realize that we absorb the bad so quickly. Like the brain is wired to do that.
I will show you in a sutta where it says, so Hanipute, can you get that sutta that I send you, the birth, old age and death? From Anguttara Nikaya, I will show you what Buddha is saying about it. Buddha is saying that we have this tendency to find faults.
Okay.
And so that is that you suck the negativity. There is so much good about a person, so much good about a government, so much good about a president, so much good about the mother, father, whatever. But we tend to focus on the bad. And we pick up the bad and we talk about the bad. So nothing changes. It's only the ill will and all the other bad qualities come up, and the emotions, and only the stress and the suffering we increase. As a person, as an individual, as a family, as a society, as a country, This is what the whole world is going through. So it's very important to consciously purify the mind. This is what Buddha is saying. Have you got that sutta?
Yeah. Yes.
This sutta is showing what we are doing wrong
Right.
and why we are doing it, the cause of that, and how to abandon it, and what we should be developing.
Yeah.
Now, if you come to the page 259, you can see on that last big para, from bottom line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On the 6th line, can you see not being a fault finder?
Yes, I found it. Not being a fault, he can abandon mindfulness, lack of clear comprehension and mental distraction.
එතකොට ඒක තමයි කොනේම තියෙන හැටියට පෙන්වන්නේ. මේ fault finding mind එක කියන්නේ කුණු හොයන mind එක. මිනිස්සු කුණුම තමයි හොයන්නේ. ඒ මොකක් හරි එකක් කුණක් තමයි ඇදලා ගන්න. කුණක්ම තමයි අහන්නේ. කුණක්ම තමයි අවුස්සලා ගන්න කැමති. ඒ කියන්නේ අර ඒ brain එකේ ඒ වය වෙලා තියෙන හැටි. ඉතින් බුදුරජාන් වහන්සේ ඒකයි පෙන්වන්නේ මේ ඒ fault finding mentality එක අතහැරෙන්න ඕනි කියලා. ඒක තියාගෙන මේ ගමන යන්න බෑ. Being a fault finder, he cannot abandon unmindfulness, lack of clear comprehension and mental distraction. ඉතින් වැඩ ඉවරයිනේ. Being a fault finder, he cannot abandon unmindfulness. ඒ කියන්නේ සතිය නැතිකම එන්නේ මේක නිසායි. සම්මා සතිය වඩන්න බෑ, සති සම්පජාඤ්ඤය වඩන්න බෑ කියනවා මේ අද වැරදි කුණු හොයනකම්. ඉතින් මනුස්සයාගේ හැටි තමයි ඕක. ඉතින් ඒක තමයි අපි ඒ සතිය අපිට මෙව ඉගෙන ගන්න ඕනේ. ඒකයි දැන් අපි ගැන අවබෝධයෙන් ඉඳී ඒක අපිට තේරෙන්න ඕනේ මෙන්න මෙහෙම දෙයක් මගේ හිත ඇතුලේ වෙනවා නේද කියලා. ඒක වෙනවා නේද කියලා තේරෙනකොට consciously දැන් අපි දැන් මේ මං කිව්ව අපි ගත්තොත් අපිට පොඩි පහේ level එකකින් නෙමේ ටිකක් ඒක නිකන් amplify වෙලා පේන level එකක් ගමුකෝ. හැම රටකම මං කියන්නේ ආණ්ඩුව කාටවත් හොඳ නැහැ. තියෙන ආණ්ඩුවේ වැරදිම තමයි දකින්නේ. කරන හොඳක් මුකුත් පේන්නෙම නැහැ. ඉතින් ආණ්ඩුවක් ඇවිල්ලා අවුරුද්ද දෙකේ ඉඳලා බලන්නෙම පෙරලන්න. ඊට පස්සේ ඊළඟ ආණ්ඩුව එනවනේ. ඒ ආපු වෙලේ ඉඳගෙනත් බලන්නේ පෙරලන්න. කවුරුවක්වත් කරගෙන යන හොඳ දෙයක් චුට්ටක් හරි දැකලා ඒක ඇම්ප්ලිෆයි කරලා විශ්වාසයක් තියලා එයාට උදව් කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා එහෙම කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතින් එතකොට රටක් හැටියට ඒ රට දියුණු වෙන්නත් බෑ. ඊට පස්සේ ඔෆිස් එකක් ගන්නකො. টপ මැනේජ්මන්ට් එකේ ඇදම තමයි දකින්නේ. මැනේජර්ගේ ඇදම තමයි දකින්නේ. සුපර්වයිසර්ගේ ඇදම තමයි දකින්නේ. ලීඩින් හෑන්ඩ්ගේ ඇදම තමයි දකින්නේ. කවුරුත් කාගේවත් හොඳක් දකින්නේ නැහැ. ඇදම දකිනවා බලනවා ඒව මේ ඇම්ප්ලිෆයි කර ඉතින් ගෙදරත් එහෙමයි. ඕක පටන් ගන්න අපේ පොඩි කාලේ ඉඳලා අපිට හරියට කියලා දුන්නේ නැතුව. ඕක පොඩි ළමයාගෙත් තියෙනවා පේරන්ට්ස් ලාගෙත් තියෙනවා. දැන් ඔය මෙහි තියෙන අපි ඒක එච්චර එහෙම අපේ කල්චර්ස් වල අපි කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. අපි ඒක බොහොම ගරුත්වයෙන් අරගෙන අපි මෙව කරන්නේ. නමුත් මෙහි මේ සයිකොලොජි වල ඉඳලාම උගන්වලා පොඩි ළමයෙක් ඔළුවට දාන ගත්තම මේ පොඩි ළමයි ලොකු වුණාට පස්සේ මේ තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න යාලා කියන්නේ පොඩි කාලේ මේ අම්මලා තාත්තලා ට්‍රීට් කරපු විදිහේ තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න කියලා. දැන් අම්මලා තාත්තලාගේ තියෙනවනේ ගතිය ළමයාව අප්‍රීෂিয়েට් කරලා අනේ පොඩි හොඳ හරි අරගෙන ඒක උඩුක්කල කතා කරලා well done you are good කී එහෙම කරන අම්මලා තාත්තලා ඉන්නේ බොහොම පොඩ්ඩයි. වැඩි හරියක් අම්මලා තාත්තලා ඉන්නේ අර ළමයාගේ කොච්චර හොඳ තිබුණත් පොඩි වැරද්දක් හරි තිබුණොත් ඒ වැරද්ද අල්ලගෙන වැරද්දම ඇම්ප්ලිෆයි කර ඒව කතා කරන එක. හැමෝම එක්ක ඒ ළමයාගේ වැරදි කියන එක එක්කෝ ඒ ළමයාට ඒ වැරදි කියන එක මොනවා කෙරුවත් මොන ලකුණු ගෙනාවත් ඒක ගැන සතුටක් නෑ. ඉතින් ඒ ඔහොම එනවා. ඉතින් මේක මේ ළමයාට එයා ඒ confidence නැතුව යනවා. ලොකු වෙනකොට එයාට confidence නැහැ. ඊට පස්සේ දැන් මෙහි psychology වල ගොඩක් වෙලාවට පෙන්වන්නේ මේ ළමයින්ගේ ප්‍රශ්න හැටියට අර අම්මලා තාත්තලා හරියට ඒක handle කරපු නැති එක කියලා. ඉතින් දැන් හැමෝම කියන්නේ මේ parents problems. We have parents problems. මෙහි ප්‍රශ්නයකට ගියාම කියන්නේම we all have this parent syndrome. අපි කවදාවත් මේක උලුප්පල කියන්නේ නමුත් මෙයාලා ඒක උලුප්පල කියනවා. ඒක දකින්න නැති නිසා එතන ගුණවත්කමට පොඩි අම්මලා තාත්තලා ගුණවත්කමට ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙනවා කියන එක නිසා අපි සද්ද නැතුව හිටියට මෙයාලා කියනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ මේක මේ සාමාන්‍ය මිනිස්සයාගේ තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නයක්. අම්මගේ තාත්තගේ ඉඳලා අර ළමයාවත් ට්‍රේන් කරන්නේ අම්මා තාත්තත් ඉන්නේ එතන නිසා අර ළමයාට ඇද වැරදි පෙන්නලා ඒක කියලා දීලා ඒ ළමයා එතන ඉඳන් හැදෙන්නේ තනුන්ගේ ඇද වැරදි බලන තැන. අනුන්ගේ ඇද වැරදි පේන තැන. අම්මගේ ඇද වැරද්ද පේන තැන ඉඳලා. ඉතින් මේක රිවර්ස් කරන්න නම් consciously we need to do this. ඒක නිසා තමයි බුදුජාන් වහන්සේ හැමතැනම පෙන්නලා දෙන්නේ. අර එක තැනක කියනවා මේ අපිට කවුරු හරි මොනවා හරි වැරද්දක් කෙරුවොත් එව්ව නිකන් හුළඟේ අහු වුණා වගේ යන්න දෙන්න ඕනේ. වතුර ඇඳපු ඉරක් වගේ මේ ඇඳිලා යන්න දෙන්න ඕනේ. මැකිලා යන්න දෙන්න ඕනේ. හුළඟේ අහු වෙන්න මේක පාවෙනවා වගේ යන්න දෙන්න ඕනේ. සමාව දීලා අපිට අතාරින්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒක මේ ඊට පස්සේ හොඳ කරනවා නම් කවුරු හරි ඒක හුළඟේ පාවෙලා ලියන්න දෙන්න හොඳ නැහැ. ඒක වතුරේ ලියපු අකුරු ටිකක් වගේ දිය වෙලා යන්න දෙන්න හොඳ නැහැ. ඒක ගලේ කොටා ගන්න ඕනේ කියනවා. පේනවනේ ගලේ කොටපු 2500 කට ඉස්සෙල්ලම තාමත් තියෙනවා. ඒක පවතිනවා. එතකොට අපිට ඒ gratitude කියන එක එනවා. නමුත් බුදුජානක වහන්සේ පෙන්වනවා මේ පුතගුණ දන්න අය මේ gratitude කියන එක හරියම දුර්ලභයි. මොනවද ගලේ කෙටුවා වගේ ලියාගන්නේ? අර ඇද කුද වැරදි. ඇයි නැත්තම් ඒ කෘතගුණ දක්වන අය එච්චර දුර්ලභ වෙන්නේ? ලෝකේ දුර්ලභම ඒව හැටියට කියන්නේ බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේ කෙනෙක් පහළ වෙන එක මනුස්ස භාවයක් ලබා ගන්න එක. ඔන්න ඔය අතරට එන කෘතගුණ දන්න අය බොහොම දුර්ලභයි කියලා. ඇයි අර කුණු ගුණේ නිසා, ගතිය නිසා. කෙනෙක්ගේ පොඩි හරි හොඳක් තිබුණොත් ඒක ගන්න අර කුණු ගොඩවල් අරගෙන කුණු ගොඩවල් ඇම්ප්ලිෆයි කරගෙන තමුන් දන්නේ තමුන්ගේ ඔළුවේ එතකොට වැවෙන්නේ බැක්ටීරියා වෛරස්. කුණු දිහා බලන්න තමුන් කුණු වෙනවා. මේ අද ලෝකේ වෙලා තියෙන්නේ ඒකයි. කුණු දිහා බලලා ටීවී එක දාගෙන තැන ඉඳන් නිවුස් දාගන්න තැන ඉඳන් පත්තරේ ඉඳන් කියෝන එක අහන එක බලන එක ඔක්කොම කුණු. දන්නේම නැතුව මොලෙත් කුණු වෙලා යනවා. බැක්ටීරියා වෛරස් වැවිලා ගන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. අසතුටින් ඉන්නේ. කුණු ගැන හිතනකොට කුණු හොයනකොට කුණු කතා කරනකොට ඉබේට කුණු කෙරෙන්නත් ගන්නවා කුණු වෙන. ඉතින් කොහෙද සතුටක් එන්නේ? අද මේ ලෝකේ තියෙන මේ mental illness, depression, stress එකට මූලික හේතුවක් මේක. මේක මොලේම ප්‍රශ්නයක්. ඉතින් ඒ නිසා තමයි අපි මේ ගැන අවare වෙලා අපි මේක අතහැරෙන තැනට වැඩ කරා. ඒකට තමයි අපි අර හොඳකම වඩන්න ඕනේ. ගුණවත්කම වඩන්න ඕනේ. ඒකට තමයි මේ සද්ධර්මයේ මඟ පෙන්වන්නේ. එහෙනම් මේක ප්‍රැක්ටිකලි කරන්න කියන්නේ ඒකයි. මේකේ උපදේශ ටික අරගෙන you have to practice it. හරි අමාරුයි. දැන් කොතනක වුණත් එහෙමනේ කවුරු හරි චුට්ට එහෙම වෙන්න බෑ. ඒක තමයි පේන්නේ ඇම්ප්ලිෆයි වෙලා ඒක අල්ලගෙන ඒකට ගාගෙන යන්න හදනවා. එහෙම නෙමෙයි. අපි ඉවසන්න ඕනේ. සමාව දෙන්න ඕනේ. චූටි හරි හොඳක් එයා කරලා තිනවනේ අපි ඒක මතක් කරගෙන ඒකට ප්‍රතිඋපකාර කරලා බලලා ඒක මතක් වෙනකොට මොන හදවත සොෆ්ට් වෙලා යනවා. ඉතින් එතකොට ඔන්න මෛත්‍රිය ගන්න ලේසි. ඊට පස්සේ මෛත්‍රී සහගතව මේ ප්‍රශ්න විසඳ ගන්න ලේසි. ඒක තමයි යන්න ඕන පාර. ඒක යන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතින් ඒක තමයි ලොකුම ප්‍රශ්නේ. මේ සූත්‍ර කියලා දෙන්නේ ඒකයි. ඔයා ඇහෙන් දකින්න තරමට තමයි හොඳ. ඇයි මේ අපි මෙහෙම ඉපදෙන්නේ, වයසට යන්නේ, මැරෙන්නේ මේ ඇයි කියලා. ඒක බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේ පෙන්නන දෙන මෙන්න මේව තමයි හේතු කියලා. ඉතින් ඒ හේතු කියලා පටන් ගන්නවා. මේ අපිට තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න ගැන කියලා මෙන්න මේ දුර්වලකම් නිසා තමයි මෙන්න මේ හේතු තියෙන්නේ. ඊට පස්සේ ඒව හේතු වෙනවා තව දුර්වලකම් වලට ඔහොමම පෙන්නනවා. ඇයි අපේ තුල මේ සප්තබොජ්ජංග වැඩෙන්නේ නැත්තේ? ඇයි අපේ තුල මේ සති සම්පජාන්‍ය වැඩෙන්නේ නැත්තේ? ඇයි අපිට යෝනිසෝ මනසිකාරය කරගන්න බැරි? අන්න එතනදි පෙන්නන මේ කුණු මනසින්ද මේ කුණු හොයනකින්ද fault finding mind. ඒක අතාරින්න ඕනේ. ඒක අතෑරිනහම තමයි මේ දුර්වලකම තේරුම් අරන් ඒ කුණු අල්ලන ගතිය අතෑරුනම තමයි ෆස්ට් ගියර් එකට දාලා උඩට යන්න පුළුවන්. එතකම් බෑ. ඉතින් එතකම් බලන්න මිනිස්සෙගේ ජීවිතේ දියුණුවක් නෑ එතකම් හැබෑ දියුණුවක්. එතකම් පවුලක දියුණුවකුත් නෑ, ගමේ දියුණුවක් නෑ, රටේ දියුණුවක් නෑ, ලෝකේ දියුණුවකුත් නෑ. ඒ levels වලට apply කරගත්තා. This is what hinders us. ඉතින් දැන් අපි මේකේ නිකන් බැහැලා ඉන්නේ මේක නිකන් ස්වභාවික වෙලා. පත්තරයක් අරන් බලන්නකෝ. කොච්චර ලෝකේ හොඳ අය ඉන්නවද? හොඳ වැඩ කරනවද? ඒකෙන් කීයෙන් කීයද මීඩියා එකේ ලියවිලා තියෙන්නේ පත්තරේ හරි රේඩියෝ එකේ හරි ටීවී එකේ හරි නිවුස් වලට දෙන්නේ කීයෙන් කීයද හොඳ වැඩක් කරපු එක? 100%ක්වත් තියනවද මන්ද? නමුත් හැමතැනම පොඩි වෙන හරි කුණු වැඩ තියෙනවා නම් අහුලගෙන එනවා නිලමැස්ස වගේ ඒ තැන් වලට ගිහිල්ලා හොයාගෙන ඇවිල්ලා මුළු නිවුස් එකම පිරීලා තියෙන 99%ම මර නරකේ. හැබැයි ඊට වඩා කීප දෙනෙක් හරි කරන ඊට වඩා ගොඩාක් හොඳ දේවල් ලෝකේ වෙනවා. ඒව වාර්තා කරන්න ඒවට ඇහැ යන්නෙත් නෑ හොයලා බලන්නෙත් නෑ කවුරුවත් කරලා තියෙන සේවයක් ගැන හොයන්නේ එයාගේ ගුණේ නුවණ ගැන අගය කරන්නේ මොනවත් නෑ. මරුණාට පස්සේ තමයි ඒකත් ඒ බොරුව කරන්නේ. යන්න ඕක තමයි ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙන්නේ. ඉතින් මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ අපි තේරුම් ගන්න ඕනේ මේක අපේ ඇතුලේ තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නයක්. මේකට ඇඩ්‍රස් කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒක එරුවොත් තමයි ගැලවෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් මේ අයට තේරෙනවා දැන් ඒකට හේතුව මොකද්ද? මොලේ මෙහෙම තමයි ෆයර් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ කියලා අන්න නියුරෝ සයන්ටිස්ට් කියනවා. අන්න ඒකේ තියෙන ගැඹුර. ආයි බෝන්ස් වලින් මැරෝ බෝන් වලින් සෛල වලින් DNA එකටම ගිහිල්ලා DNA එකේ ඉඳන් මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙන්නේ. දැන් මෙතන ඉන්න අයත් ඔක අයිඩෙන්ටිෆයි කරනවා නම් වහාම අද ඉඳලා හිතට ගන්නවා මම මේ වැරද්ද කරන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. කොච්චර වැරදි පෙනුනත් ගොඩක් වැරදි තියෙනවා ලෝකේ. නමුත් ඒක දිගේ යන්න එපා. ඒක දිගේ යන්න හිත කිසි වෙනවා. කරන්න ඕනේ වැරද්ද හැටියට දැක්කා. හරි. දැන් මේකට මම මොකද්ද කරන්න ඕනේ? ඒක හදා ගන්න ඕන දෙයක් නම් මට ඉන්ෆ්ලුවෙන්ෂල් රේන්ජ් එකේ තියෙන එකක් නම් මට වෙනසක් කරන්න පුළුවන් එකක් නම් ඒක හදා ගන්න ඕන මොකද්ද කරන්න ඕන? අන්න දැන් පොසිටිව්ලි හොයන්න ඕන. නෙක්ඛම්ම විතර්ක, අව්‍යාපාද විතර්ක, අවිහිංසා විතර්ක පාවිච්චි කරලා අන්න දැන් ප්‍රශ්න විසඳ ගන්න හොයාගත්ත පිළියම දැන් ඒකට ફોකස් කරනවා. දැන් ආයි පොසිටිවිටි එකට යනවා. අන්න ඒකයි. නමුත් හැමතිස්සෙම අපි ගිහිල්ලා රැඳෙන්න හදන්නේ අතන. ඉතින් එතකොට අපේ අතින් වෙන ලොකු වැරද්දක් තමයි අපි ප්‍රශ්න විසඳගන්නෙත් නැහැ. සොලියුෂන්ස් හොයන්නෙත් නැහැ. මොකක්වත් නැහැ. එහෙට බැන මෙහෙට බැන දොඩෝ ඉන්නවා හැමදාම. තුවාලේ ඔඩු දුවනවා. රටේ දියුණුවකුත් නැහැ, ගමේ දියුණුවකුත් නැහැ, පවුලේ දියුණුවකුත් නැහැ, මගේ දියුණුවකුත් නැහැ. එච්චරයි. ඉතින් මේ ඒක හරිය හොඳ පොයින්ට් එකක් එයා ඒ පෙන්නලා දුන්නේ. සෝ ඕකේ ග්‍රැවිටි එක තේරෙයි මේ සූත්‍රය හොයාගෙන හැමෝම කියවන්න. උත්තර නිකායේ මේ පොතේ නම් තියෙන 65 කියලා මේකේ නම මේක මේ හැමෝ ළඟම ඇති මේක බොහොම ප්‍රසිද්ධ පොතක් නේ. ඕගොල්ලෝ ඒක පේන්නේ නැහැ නේද? ස්ක්‍රීන් එකට. මේ මොකද? ඔය numerical discourses of the Buddha. ඒකෙන් ලයිට් එක රිෆ්ලෙක්ට් වෙනවා ඒකයි. මේ ඒක ඉතින් මේක දරුවන්ගේ ඉඳලා කියලා දෙන්න. මම ඔය වීඩියෝ එක යනකොට මේ නවත්ත කියලා දුන්න Friday group එකේ. I will send you the link to the group. You all can listen to it. මොකද ඔය එයා ඒ කරපු කතාව දෙපාරක් තුන්පාරක් අහන්න ඕනි පොළොවේ පෑනකුයි තියාගෙන පොඩ්ඩක් දෙපාරක් තුන් පාරක් අහන්න මේ එතකොට ගොඩක් දේවල් ඔළුවට යාවි. මේ ධර්මය he was teaching it in a scientific language. That's what he was doing. අන්න එක. වෙන මොනවද අහන්න තියෙන්නේ? ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න, නැත්නම් අපිට හිමීට ගිහිල්ලා භාවනා කරන්නත් පුළුවන්, භාවනා කරගන්න නේද?
Yes, Bhikkhuni Mahatsa, questions haven't come in. අපි එහෙනම් meditation session එකකට යමුද?
ඔව් දැන් ඔහෙට වෙලාව කීයද?
Now it's 3:40, almost 3:36.
මෙහෙමයි. භාවනාව කියන එක තේරුම් ගත්තාම තනියම තමයි කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ කියන්නේ අපිට පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනේ අපේ තුලට අවධානය යොමු කරන්න. අපිට දැනෙන විදිය, අපේට දැනෙන වේදනා, අපේ මූඩ් එක, අපේ සිතිවිලි කියන මේ හතර පොළට අවධානය යොමු කරන්න ඕනේ. කයට, වේදනාවට, චිත්තයට, මනසට. එතකොට ඔන්න අපිට පේනවා නම් හිතින් මේ මනසෙන් පටන් ගමුකෝ. අර කිලුට සිතිවිලි වැඩ කරනවා. ඒක අතාරින්න ඕනේ. අපිට කොන්ෂස්ලි පුළුවන් පිරිසිදු සිතිවිලි වඩන්න ගන්න. ඒ කොන්ෂස්ලි පිරිසිදු සිතිවිලි වඩන ක්‍රමේ තමයි එක ගොඩාක් ක්‍රම තියෙනවා. එකක් තමයි චතුරාර්යකන භාවනා කියලා කෝකටත් තයිල වගේ කියලා බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේ මේ හතර ප්‍රැක්ටිස් කරන්න කියනවා වැඩිපුර. බුද්ධානුස්සතිය, මෙත්තානුස්සතිය, අසුභානුස්සතිය, මරණානුස්සතිය. එතකොට ඔව්ව අපි කොන්ෂස්ලි වඩනකොට අපේ තුල අර නෙක්ඛම්ම විතර්ක, අව්‍යාපාද විතර්ක, අවිහිංසා විතර්ක වලින් හිතන්න පුරුදු වෙනවා. අපි ජීවිතේ එක අත්දැකීම් වලට මුහුණ දෙද්දී අර විතර්ක අරගෙන ඒකට මුහුණ දෙන්න පුරුදු වෙනවා. අන්න එහෙම කරනකොට එන්න හිත පිරිසිදු වෙනකොට, හිත සාන්ත වෙනකොට අන්න අපිට තව ගැඹුරෙන් යථාර්ථ දිහා බලන තැනට එන්න පුළුවන්. අර වගේ කරනකොට හිත පිරිසිදු වෙනකොට, පිරිසිදු හිතවිලි වඩනකොට පංච නීවරණ අයින් වෙනවා. අවිස්සන ගතිය අඩු වෙනවා. එතකොට හිතේ ක්ලැරිටි එක වැඩි වෙනවා. අන්න ක්ලැරිටි එක වැඩි වෙනකොට අර උදේ අහපු ප්‍රශ්නේ මොකද්ද? පංච උපාදානස්කන්ධය, පංචස්කන්ධය ගැන කන්ටෙම්ප්ලේට් කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. මේ දකින දේ, ඇහෙන දේ, දැනෙන දේ, දැනගන්න දේ හැම දෙයක්ම රූප, වේදනා, සංඥා, සංකාර, විඥාන කියන ක්‍රියාවලිය තුලින් හටගත්ත ඵලයක්. අර හේතු එකක් හරි නිරුද්ධ වුණාම මේ ඵලෙත් නිරුද්ධයි. දැන් අපි මම ආයි මතක් කරන්නම් මෙතන අලුතෙන් කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවනම් ඇහැට ආලෝක කිරණ වැදිලා මේ ඇහි තියෙන සෛල ස්ටිමියුලේට් වුණා. මෙතන උඩිය අටකුරු වෙච්ච ප්‍රතිබිම්බය හැදිලා මේ පණවිඩේ එතන හැදෙන වර්ණ සටහන අර ඉලෙක්ට්‍රොමැග්නටික් ෆීල්ඩ් එකේ තියෙන වර්ණ සටහන ඇහි ඩිටෙක්ට් කරන්නේ වර්ණ සටහනක් හැටියට ඒ ආලෝකයේ තියෙන ෆ්‍රීකවන්සි එක ඒ වර්ණ සටහන උඩිය අටකුරු වෙලා මෙතන තියෙන්නේ. ඒක ඇහැට ගෙනිච්චාම ඇහැ මොලේට ගෙනිච්චාම මොලෙන් ඒක හරි පැත්තට හරි ගස්සලා හදලා දෙනවා. ඒක තමයි රූප කියන්නේ. ඒතර අපි දකින්නේ රූපේ. අපි ඇහෙන් ලෝකේ දකින්නවා කියලා හිතුවට ඇහැ අරගෙන හිටියට ඇහෙන් ඩේටා අරගෙන ඉන්නේ. ඇහැ ඇතුළට එනවා දොර වගේ. දොරෙන් ඇතුළට එනවා වගේ ඩේටා අරගෙන ඇවිල්ලා හැබැයි අපි දකින්නේ ප්‍රොජෙක්ටර් එකට දාලා තියෙන එක බලන් ඉන්නවා වගේ මොලෙන් හදලා දෙන එක මොලෙන් ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් කරන එක. ඒක තමයි රූපේ කියලා කියන්නේ. ඒතකොට මෙන්න මේ අත්දැකීම අපි විඳිනවා. සැපක් හැටියට දුකක් හැටියට එක්ක අදුක්කුණ අසුක විදියට. මෙන්න මේක මුල් කරගෙන අපි සංස්කරණයක් කරනවා. අපි ඒ පාර සංකාර හදනවා කියලා මේ වේදනා සංඥා දෙක මුල් කරගෙන අපි ඒක තව කතාවක් හදනවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් තව වැඩි දියුණු කරලා අපි ඒක ඒ සංස්කරණයකට ලක් කරගන්න. ආන්නේ සංස්කරණය කරලා දෙන දේ තමයි අඳුරගන්නේ අපි. ඒ අඳුරගන්න ශක්තිය තමයි විඥානය කියලා කියන්නේ. ඒතර මෙන්න මේ process එකෙන් තමයි අපි යමක් අත්දකින්නේ. විඥාණයෙන් අත්දකින්නේ රූපේ. වේදනා සංඥා සංකාර කියන තුන එකට ඇකුළුවොත් නාම ධර්මතා කියලා කියනවා. ඒකෙන් අඳුරගන්න උදව් කරන්නේ. ඒතර මෙන්න මේ නාම රූප තමයි විඥාණයෙන් අඳුරගන්නේ. ඒතර මෙන්න මේ විඥාණයෙන් අඳුරගන්න අපි එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් කරන අපේ එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් එකේ ස්වභාවය තමයි මේ නාම රූප වල ස්වභාවය තමයි මේක එක දිගට පවතින දෙයක් නෙමෙයි ස්ටැටික් එකක් නෙමෙයි. හේතුම් පටිච්ච සම්භූතං හේතුබංගා නිරුජ්ජති. ඒ හේතු තියෙනකොට මේ ඵල හට ගන්නවා අර හේතු නිරුද්ධ වෙනකොට ඒ ඵලත් නිරුද්ධ වෙනවා. එතකොට අපිට අවශ්‍ය නම් යමක් පාලනය කරගන්න හේතු තමයි අපි හේතු දිහා තමයි බලන්නේ. අන්න. මොකද හේතු නිරුද්ධ කිරීමෙන් ඒ අර අදාළ ඵල නිරුද්ධ වෙන තැනින් කියන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් මෙන්න මේ අපේ පාලනයකින් තොරව හේතුඵල නියාම ධර්මයකට අනුව වැඩ කරන මේ ක්‍රියාවලිය අපේ ආයතන ටික ඇසීම දැනීම ඇසීම දැකීම දැනීම දැනගැනීම කියන මෙන්න මේ එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් ටික එන්නේ රූප වේදනා සංඥා සංකාර විඥාන කියන ක්‍රියාවලිය නිසා අරක ලක්ෂණය අනිච්චයි දුකයි අනාත්තයි. උදේ අපි කතා කරේ. ඉතින් අනිච්ච වෙච්ච දුක වෙච්ච අනාත්ත වෙච්ච මේ ක්‍රියාවලියේ ගන්න එසෙන්ස් එකක් නැහැ. මේකෙන් හටගන්න සතුටකුත් නැහැ. මේක කරන කෙනෙකුත් නැහැ. මේක කෙරෙන ක්‍රියාවලියක් process එකක්. එහෙනම් මේ ක්‍රියාවලියට මම කියලා කියන්න බෑ. මේකට මගේ කියලා කියන්න බෑ. මගේ ආත්මය කියලා නොනසී පවතින යමක් තියනවා ඉන්නවා කියලා ගන්න බෑ. ඒක තමයි නේතම්මම නේතෝ හමස්මි නේතෝ අත්තාති කියන්නේ. අන්න මමත්වයේ මිදෙන ක්‍රමය. මේක තමයි විදර්ශනාව කරන්නේ. අර මුලින් හොඳට හිත පිරිසිදු කරගත්තම හිත තැම්පත් වෙනකොට මෙන්න මේ ගැඹුරු තැනට එන්න පුළුවන්. අර අඩිය පෑදිච්ච විල දිහා බලනකොට අඩියෙම තියෙන එක පේනවා වගේ අර පංච නීවරණ අයින් වෙච්ච හිත දැන් ඔක්කොම කෙමිකල්ස් වලින් මිදිලා තියෙන්නේ. මොලේ ගොඩාක් පිරිසිදුයි. දැන් අර කුණු හොයන්න ගිහිල්ලා මේක කුණු බාල්දියක් කරගන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක මේ ජාති ජරා මරණ කියන සූත්‍රයේ තියෙන ස්ටෙප් බයි ස්ටෙප් කොහොමද වැරදි අතහැරලා හරි තැනට එන්නේ කියලා. මේ සූත්‍ර හොයාගන්නකො ස්ක්‍රීන් එකේ දාන්න අපි එතකොට කියවමු. හරි වැදගත් සූත්‍රයක්. එතකොට මේ විදිහට මේක ග්‍රැජුවලි අපි එන්න ඕනේ 1 by 1 මේක අද හොයාගත්තේ නැතත් කමන්නේ පස්සේ හරි අපි කරමු. මේ එතකොට එහෙම මේ 1 by 1 අපි කරගෙන ආවම අපි ග්‍රැජුවලි ඉම්ප්‍රූව් වෙනකොට මොකද්ද වෙන්නේ? එන්න මොලේ පෑදෙනවා. මේ මොලේ පෑදෙනකොට එන්න මේ අනිච්ච දුක්ඛ අනාත්ත බව පේනවා. මේ ඇහෙන දේ දකින්න දේ දැනෙන දේ දැනගන්න දේ ගන්න දෙයක් නැහැ කියලා. එතකොට එයා ඒ තුලින් එන විඳීම සැපක් වුණත් දුකක් වුණත් අදුක්කම සුකුණත් එයා ගැටෙන්න යන්නෙත් නැහැ ඇලෙන්න යන්නෙත් නැහැ. එයා ඒකේ ඇත්ත දකින්නවා එතන මේවා පවතින දේවල් නෙමේ හේතුඵල අනුව හටගන්න නිරුද්ධ වෙන ක්‍රියාවලියක් කියලා. එතකොට එයා එහෙම දකින්න එයා නිමෙන්න ගන්නවා. මොකද දැන් එයා ඇලෙන්න යන්නෙත් නැහැ ගැටෙන්න යන්නෙත් නැහැ. මොකද එයා දකින්න මේවා සදාකාලිකව තියෙන දේවල් නෙමෙයි පවතින දේවල් නෙමෙයි. හේතු අතකල්ලි හටගන්න හේතු නිරුද්ධ වෙද්දී නිරුද්ධ වෙන ක්‍රියාවලියක් කියලා. අන්නේ ඇත්ත දකිද්දී නේතම්මම නේතෝ හමස්මි නේතෝ අත්තාති කියන උත්තරේ එනවා. එතකොට ඔන්න මමත්වෙ එන්නේ උරච්චි වෙනවා. ඊගෝ එක එන්නේ උරච්චි වෙනවා. අන්න. මමත්වයේ උරච්චි වෙන්න ඇගේ ස්ට්‍රෙස් ගතිය අඩු වෙනවා. මේ අපේ කය මනස අර ස්ට්‍රෙස් සයිකල් එකේ යන එක අඩු වෙනවා. මමත්වයේ අඩු වෙන්න මමත්වයක් දුරු වෙන විදියට හිතන්න ඇඟ පැරසිම්පතටික් එකේ යනවා. යන්න අපි රිලැක්ස් වෙලා කම්ෆර්ටබල් වෙලා පීස්ෆුල් වෙලා හැපි වෙනවා. ඒ හිත පිරිසිදු කරනකොට රිලැක්සේෂන් එක මුලින්ම වෙන්නේ. ඒ රිලැක්සේෂන් එකේ වැදගත්කමක් මෙන්න මේ නියුරෝ සයන්ටිස්ට් කියලා දුන්නාන්න. බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේ පෙන්වලා දෙන දුක්ඛෝ පටිච්චිතෝ ලෝක මේ ලෝකේ මේ කය මේ මනස පිහිටලා තියෙන්නේ දුකේ ස්ට්‍රෙස් එකේ තමයි බහැලා තියෙන්නේ. ස්ට්‍රෙස් එක තමයි මේකේ පුරුද්දට යන සයිකල් එක. කුණු තමයි අදින්නේ, කුණු තමයි හිතන්නේ, කුණු තමයි කතා කරන්නේ, කුණු තමයි වැඩ කරන්නේ. ඒ නිසා මේක දුක මත පිහිටලා තියෙන සිස්ටම් එකක්. දුක්ඛේ පටිච්චිතෝ ලෝකේ. දුකෙන් මිදෙන්න ඕනේ නම් මෙන්න මේ ට්‍රේට්ස් ඔබවා යන්න ඕනේ. මෙවුවා අතහැරලා මෙවුවා දැකලා මෙවුවා ගෙන් ඔබට යන්න ඕනේ. ඒක තමයි පටිසෝතිගාමී කියන්නේ. ලේසි පහසු වැඩක් නෙමෙයි. ඒක ග්‍රැජුවලි කරන්න ඕනේ දෙයක්. මේක කරන්න නම් සම්‍යක් දෘෂ්ටියට අනිවාර්යෙන් එන්න ඕනේ. සම්‍යක් දෘෂ්ටියක් නැතුව මේක මේ අන්ධයෙක් වගේ කරන්න පුළුවන් වැඩක් නෙමෙයි. අන්ධයෙක් වගේ යන්න පුළුවන් ගමනක් නෙමෙයි. ඉතල තමුන්ගේ ඇස් දෙක අරගන්න ඕනේ. දුක දුක හැටියට දකින්න පුළුවන් නුවණ පහළ වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒක පහළ කරගන්න ඕනේ. කියන්නේ චතුරාර්ය සත්‍යයට අනුව එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් එක දිහා බලන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. ඉතින් එතනට එන්නත් අමාරු නම් අඩුම ගානේ මේ කාමයේ විසක් හැටියට දකින්න, කාමයේ වසක් හැටියට දකින්න, කාමයේ ගින්දරක් හැටියට දකින්න, කාමයේ අපිව මහා අමාරුවකට දාන දෙයක් හැටියට දකින්න. තණ්හා ජායති සෝකෝ කාමයෙන් සෝකේ ගේන්නේ කියලා දකින්න. මේ කාමයේ පස්සේ යන්න දුක එන්නේ කියලා දකින්න. ස්ට්‍රෙස් එක එන්නේ කියලා දකින්න. මේක තමයි අපිව විනාශ කරන්න කියලා. මොකද කාමයේ පස්සේ යන්නේ උදේ දවල් රැ. කොහෙද ගැලවෙන්නේ? අඩුම ගානේ එහෙම දකින්න. දුක කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියන එක. එහෙම දකිනකොට ඒ චතුරාර්ය සත්‍යයට අනුව අඩු ගානේ මට්ටමින් දකිනකොට මේ එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් එකම අරගෙන අනිච්චයි දුකයි අනත්තයි කියන ඒ මට්ටමින් චතුරාර්ය සත්‍ය දකින්න බැරි වුණත් අඩු ගානේ හැමතිස්සෙම කන්ටෙම්ප්ලේට් කරන්න. හැම දෙයකම තියෙන මේ නිසරු බව, වැඩකට නැති බව, කාමයේ ඕන වෙනකොට ඒක විනයක් බව. ඒකෙන් අපිට වින කෙටෙනවා. ඒකෙන් අපිට හානියක් වෙනවා. එතකොට එන්න අපි අර ප්ලසන්ට් ෆීලිංග්ස් වලට ඇලෙන ගතිය අඩු වෙනවා. එන්න අර අන්ප්ලසන්ට් එකත් එක්ක ගැටෙන ගතිය අඩු වෙනවා. අපේ ප්‍රොජෙක්ට්ස් අඩු වෙනවා. නාස්තිය විනාශය අඩු වෙනවා. සල්ලි හම්බ කරන්න දඟලන එක අඩු වෙනවා. අර ගෙදර තියෙන ටයිල් එක අයින් කරන්න හදන එක නැතුව යනවා. ඒ පාර ඒකට වෙන් කරපු සල්ලියක් තියෙනවනේ ඒක අපි වෙන කෙනෙක්ට දීලා සතුටු වෙනවා. ටයිල් එක නෙමෙයි ගෙදරක් නැති කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා එහා පැත්තේ. එයාට දීලා ඒක බලලා සතුටු වෙනවා. මේ සම්‍යක් දෘෂ්ටිය ආපු තැන ඉඳලා අපේ උඩි යටිකුරු වෙනවා. අපි හිතන පතන ක්‍රමේ වෙනස් වෙනවා. අපි සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම අර පාරමිතා වඩා ගන්න තැනට එනවා. ඒක වඩ එව්වගෙන් සතුට ලබන්න එනවා. මේ සම්‍යක් දෘෂ්ටියට එන්න යාගේ දාන, සීල, නෙක්ඛම්ම, විරිය, සච්ච, සති, එතකොට සමාධි, මෙත්තා, උපේක්ඛා මේ ඔක්කොම මේ ප්‍රඥා වැඩිගෙන එනවා. මෙයා කොන්ෂස්ලි මේව වඩනවා. ඒව වැඩෙනවා. වැඩෙන්න මේක යථාර්ථ ගැඹුරෙන් තව පේන්න ගන්නවා. පේන්න ප්‍රඥාව වැඩෙනවා. ප්‍රඥාව වැඩෙන්න චතුරාර්ය සත්‍ය තව ගැඹුරෙන් ඇප්ලයි වෙනවා. ඇප්ලයි වෙන්න තමයි ආර්ය අෂ්ටාංගික මාර්ගයේ මෙයා වැඩපිළිවෙල කරගෙන යන්නේ. සම්මා සංකප්ප ඉඳලා. සම්මා සංකප්ප කියන්නේ නෙක්ඛම්ම සංකප්ප, අව්‍යාපාද සංකප්ප, අවිහිංසා සංකප්ප. අපි උදේ කතා කරේ අර කුණු සිතිවිලි අතෑරලා තමුන්ගේ එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් එකක් ඒ කුණු සිතිවිලි වලින් ඉන්ටර්ප්‍රිට් කරන එක පැත්තක දාලා පිරිසිදු විදිහට හිතන්න ගන්න. නෙක්ඛම්ම සංකප්ප, අව්‍යාපාද සංකප්ප, අවිහිංසා සංකප්ප. ඒ සංකප්ප වල දැන් ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම් එක පිරිසිදුයි නම් සංකප්ප පිරිසිදුයි නම් එයාගේ කතාව ක්‍රියාව ජීවත් වෙන විදිය පිරිසිදු වෙනවා. සම්මා වාචා, සම්මා කම්මන්ත, සම්මා ආජීව. අන්න පිරිසිදු වෙනවා. සීලයක පිහිටනවා. උතුලෙන් වෙන සීලයක පිහිටනවා. ඉතින් ඒ චුට්ට විතරක්මද ඊට පස්සේ සම්මා වායාමයේ කියලා 100% ඔන්න දැන් කන්ද අදින්න ෆස්ට් එකට දාලා අදිනවා වගේ හරියට කරන්න ගන්නවා වැඩේ. මොකද්ද නූපන් අකුසල් උපදින්න දෙන්නෙත් නෑ. උපන් අකුසල් එවලම අතාරිනවා. සංවර ප්‍රහාණ මේ ඉන්ද්‍රිය ටික සංවර කරගන්නවා. නිකමට හරි අකුසලයක් ඉපදිලා આવොත් ඒක ප්‍රහාණය කරනවා. දැන් ඔය අයගෙම තුලින් ඉල්ලීම ආවේ අපි අටසිල්ම රැකගෙන ඉමුද කියන එක. එතකොට ඒක තේරුම ඒක කරන්න අපි සංවර කරගන්නවා අපේ ඉන්ද්‍රිය. අපි ඉන්ද්‍රියට වැඩි ස්ටිමුලේට් කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඒතර නූපන් අකුසල් උපදින්න තියෙන chance එක ගොඩාක් අඩුයි. මොකද අවශ්‍ය නම් විතරයි ඇහැ අරින්නේ. අවශ්‍ය නම් විතරයි දෙයක් බලන්නේ. අවශ්‍ය නම් විතරයි දෙයක් අහන්නේ. අවශ්‍ය නම් විතරයි කන් දෙක අරින්නේ. නැත්තම් ඒව වහගෙන ඉන්නේ. එයාට ඒව අරින්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. ඒව පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ නැහැ. පාවිච්චි කරනවා නම් කරන්නේ අවශ්‍ය දෙයකට විතරයි. අන්න. ඒතර නූපන් අකුසල් උපදින්න තියෙන chances එයා ඉඩ දෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක වහනවා, අහුවෙනවා. නිකමට හරි මේ ඔක්කොම ටිකක් සංවර කරගෙන ඉන්නකොට මතකෙන් එනවා අරකයි මේකයි ඒකයි නෙව ප්‍රහාණය කරනවා. අකුසලයක් පහළ වුණොත් එවලෙම ප්‍රහාණය කරනවා. ඔය දෙක කරද්දි පංච නීවරණ අයින් වෙනවා. ඒතකොට හොඳ සමාධියකට එනවා. හැබැයි මේක සමතය. ඒ කියන්නේ පිරිසිදු කරනකම් විතරයි. සංවරය ප්‍රහාණය කරනකම් පමණයි. යෝනිසෝ මනසිකාරයත් එක්ක ඉන්නකම් විතරයි. එහෙනම් ඊළඟ ස්ටෙප් එකට යන්න ඕනේ. ඒක තමයි නූපන් කුසල් උපදව ගන්න ඕනේ. උපන් කුසල රැකගෙන යන්න ඕනේ. නූපන් කුසල් ඉපදවීම තුල තමයි මේක හරියටම වැඩේ නැගලා යන්නේ. කියන්නේ සප්තබොජ්ජංග වඩන්න ගන්න. බෝධි අංග, බුද්ධි අංග, අවබෝධයේ වැඩෙන අංගේ. ඒ අවබෝධය වැඩනකොට තමයි අන්න මෙයාට හැබෑවටම මේ අනිච්ච දුක්ඛ අනාත්ත බව නේතම්මම නේතෝ හමස්මි නේතෝ අත්තාති කියප කතාව මමෙක් ඉන්නවද නැද්ද මොකද්ද මේ කියන එක ඇත්තටම තේරෙන්න ගන්න. ඉතින් සප්තබොජ්ජංග වඩන්න පටන් ගන්න තැන තමයි අර සතර සතිපට්ඨාන. කය දිහා වමනාවෙන් බලන අවධානය යොමු කරලා වේදනාව දිහා අවධානයෙන් බලනවා. චිත්තය දිහා අවධානයෙන් බලනවා. මන දිහා අවධානය යොමු කරලා බලනවා. මේ අර රූප වේදනා සංඥා සංකාර විඥාන කියන ක්‍රියාවලිය වැඩ කරද්දී අපේ ආයතන වැඩ කරද්දී වැඩ කරන ඒකේ ප්‍රතිඵල මැනිෆෙස්ට් වෙන පොළවල් හතර. ඇඟේ ඒ අපිට ඇඟේ තමයි වේදනාවල් දැනෙන්නේ. එතකොට ඒක මොලෙන් තමයි ඩිටෙක්ට් කරගන්නේ. ඒක අපි හිතින් තමයි විඳින්නේ. ඒ වේදනාව එතකොට චිත්තය ඒ වේදනාව අපි විඳින විදිහට අනුව සැපද දුකද අදුක්කමද අසුද කියලා ඩිටෙක්ට් කරගත්ත එකට අනුව තමයි අපිට ඒක සැපද දුකද මොකද්ද වෙන්නේ කියන එක තීරණය වෙන්නේ. ඊට අනුව චිත්තය වෙනස් වෙන්න ගන්නවා. අපි ඒකට අනුව ඒ සැපද දුකද අදුක්කම අසුකමද කියලා ආපු විදිහට අනුව මවපු සිතුවිලි වලට අනුව ඉමෝෂන්ස් ඇවිස්සෙනවද නැද්ද කියන එක තීරණය වෙනවා. චිත්තය කැළඹෙනවද සාන්තව පවතිනවද කියන. ඒ ඔක්කොටම මුල මනෝපුබ්බංග මාදම්මා. මනසෙම ඇවිච්ච අදහස තමයි ඔක්කොටම මුල. ඒතුළු මනසෙම ඇවිච්ච අදහසෙන් තමයි මේ සියල්ල සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ. අපිට මනස යමක් වෙනකොට අදහස් මවන්න නැතුව ඉන්න බෑ. පුරුද්ද තමයි මවන එක. වැඩිපුර පුරුද්ද තමයි කුණු විදිහට මවන එක. ඒක තමයි දැන් මේ ට්‍රේන් කරලා සම්‍යක් දෘෂ්ටියෙන් රිවර්ස් කරන්නේ. කුණු විදියට නැතුව නෙක්ඛම්ම ව්‍යාපාද අවිහිංස. එහෙම නැත්තම් හැම තිස්සෙම කාමෙයි ව්‍යාපාදෙයි හිංසාවයි තමයි. එහෙම ගිහිල්ලා ඒ කුණු විදියට තමයි හැපි වෙන්න හදන්නේ. ඒක තමයි හුනියම. ඒක මේ රිවර්ස් කරගෙන ආවේ. ඒ රිවර්ස් කරගෙන ආවහම දැන් එයාට මේක තේරෙනවා මේ ක්‍රියාවලිය සිද්ධ වෙනකොට එෆෙක්ට් වෙන හතර පොළ තමයි මේ. ඉතින් කය තමයි මුලින්ම බලන්න ලේසි. මොකද උණු විදිහට වැඩේ වෙනකොට කය තද වෙනවා, හිර වෙනවා, ටෙන්ස් වෙනවා. මොකද ඇඟ යනවනේ ෆයිට් ඔර් ෆ්ලයිට් රියැක්ෂන් එකේ. මසල්ස් තද වෙන එකේ ඉඳලා ඕගන්ස් හිර වෙන එකේ ඉඳලා හරි අමාරු වෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒ වගේම තමයි හිතවිලි හරි පැත්තට යනකොට මේක හරි ගස්ස ගන්න ඕන රිලැක්ස් වෙන්න ගන්න. 100% රිලැක්ස් වෙනවා. කයෙන් ඩිටෙක්ට් කරගන්න පුළුවන් මනසේ මොනවද වෙන්නේ කියලා. ඒ නිසා තමයි කායගත සතිය වඩන්න කියන්නේ. එතකොට එතනින් තව ගැඹුරට බහගෙන බලනකොට මෙහෙම වෙන්නේ යා දැනෙන වේදනාවලට අනුව. මොනවද වේදනා වර්ග? ඒක අඳුර ගන්න. ඒකේ ස්වභාවය අඳුර ගන්න. ඒකට අනුව තමයි මේ චිත්තය වෙනස් වුනේ. ඒකට අනුව තමයි මවපු සිතිවිලි මැව්වේ. අන්න චේන් රියැක්ෂන් එක දකින්න ගන්නවා. මොකද්ද මේ වෙන්නේ කියලා. ඒක තමයි සති සම්පජාන්‍ය කියන්නේ. ඒක ඒ සතිය වඩනකොට ධම්ම විජය කරනවා. මේ සිදුවෙන ක්‍රියාවලිය තමුන් නුවණින් අඳුර ගන්න. නුවණින් බලනවා නුවණැසි. එතකොට තමුන්ට මේක තේරෙන්න ගන්න අවබෝධ වෙන්න ගන්න. ඒක තමයි බෝධිහංග වැඩෙනවා කියන්නේ අවබෝධ වෙන්න ගන්න. තමා තුලින් නේද මේ තණ්හාව වැඩිනේ. තමාට නේද මේ තණ්හාව වැඩින එක අතහැර ගන්න පුළුවන්. අතහැරගන්නේ කොහොමද? දැන් මේ සිතිවිලි මව ඉන්න එකනේ පුරුදු. ඉස්සෙල්ලා කිලුටු විදියට මවන සිතිවිලි අතහැරිය. දැන් පිරිසිදු විදියට හදාගත්තා. දැන් සිතිවිල්ලක් හැදුනම විදිය බලනවා. රූප වේදනා සංඥා සංකාර විඥාන. දැන් ඒක හදන්නේ නැති තැනට වෙන්න ගන්නවා. හදන්න හේතු තියන්නේ. ඇයි එයා අඳුරනවා රූප වේදනා සංඥා සංකාර විඥාන වලින් තමයි මේ එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් එක හැදෙන්නේ. ඉතින් ඒක අනිච්චයි දුකයි අනාත්තයි නැතිනම් තව මොකද්ද ඕකේ? එයාට මේ තව විඳෝ ඉන්න තව දේවල් වුමනා කරන්න වුමනාව නැති වෙනවා. එතකොට එයාට අවබෝධ වෙනකොට මේ තමම නේතෝ හමස්මි නේතෝ අත්තාති කියලා මෙතන ඇත්ත තත්ත්වේ එයාට ලොකු නිදහසක් ලැබෙන්න ගන්නවා. පස්සෙන් පන්නන්න නැති හින්දා එයාට දැන් ගොඩක් දේවල් අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. ඉතින් එයාට විවේකීව ඉන්න පුළුවන්. මේ විවේකය තුල මොලේ වැඩෙන්න ගන්නවා. මේක ගැඹුරෙන් පේන්න ගන්නවා. මේ ගැඹුරෙන් දකින්න එයාට ලොකු වීරියක් එනවා, ශක්තියක් එනවා. මේක හරියට එක දිගට වඩන්න. ඒ වඩනකොට ඉතින් චිත්ත ප්‍රීතිය එන්න ගන්නවා. මේ කය රිලැක්ස් වෙන්න ගන්නවා. සුඛයක් එන්න ගන්නවා. ප්‍රීති සුඛ සමාධි උපේක්ඛා. පළවෙනි ධානයට එනවා. එතනින් හතරවෙනි ධානයට යනකම් ගැඹුරට යනවා. 1 2 3 4 කියලා. එතකොට ඔතෙන්දී ඕක දැන් ෆයිනල් ඩෙස්ටිනේෂන් එක සම්මා සතිය. දැන් සම්මා වායාමේ නූපං කුසල් උපදවනවා කියන්නේ සතිපට්ඨානෙ වඩන. ඒ කියන්නේ සම්මා සතියට එනවා අලයින් වෙනවා. දැන් සම්මා සතිය හරියට කරනකොට අන්න දැන් නූපං කුසල් වඩලා උපදවගත්ත දැන් ඒක වඩාගෙන යන්න ඕනේ. දැන් සම්මා සතිය ප්‍රැක්ටිස් කරන්න ඕනේ. සම්මා සතිය ප්‍රැක්ටිස් කරන එක තමයි අනුරක්ෂණය කරගෙන යනකොට මේ නූපං කුසල් ටික උපදවගෙන ප්‍රැක්ටිස් කරන් යනකොට සප්ත බොජ්ජංග වැඩෙනවා. සති ධම්ම විචය වීරිය ප්‍රීති පස්සද්ධි සමාධි උපේක්ඛා. ඒක ඉතින් අර උපේක්ඛාව වැඩෙන කම්ම මේ උපං කුසල රැකගෙන වඩාගෙන යනවා. දැන් සප්ත බොජ්ජ වඩාගෙන යනවා. සප්ත බොජ්ජංග වඩනකොට සම්මා සමාධියට තමයි එන්නේ. සම්මා සතියේ ප්‍රීති සුඛ සමාධි උපේක්ඛා. අන්න සමාධිය. එතකොට ආර්ය අෂ්ටාංගික මාර්ගයේ අන්තිම ෆයිනල් ඩෙස්ටිනේෂන් එක තමයි සම්මා සමාධිය. සම්මා සමාධියෙන් රහතන් වහන්සේ කෙනෙක් තමයි උපදින්නේ. එතකොට ගේම් ඕවර්. ඉතින් එතනට තමයි එන්න ඕනේ. ඉතින් ඒක තමයි භාවනාව කියලා කියන්නේ. ඒතකොට තමුන් ඉන්න තැන ඉඳලා ඕනේ මේ භාවනාව තමුන් තෝරගන්න. තමුන් ඉස්සෙල්ලා හිත කාම් කරගන්න ඕනේද? හරියට හිතන විදිය පුරුදු වෙනවද? මේ යථාර්ථය අවබෝධ වෙන තැනට ඒක රිෆ්ලෙක්ට් කරන්න ගන්නවද? තමුන්ට හරියන දේ දන්නේ තමුන්. තමුන්ගේ හිත තියෙන තැන. කුණු පොල් ගෙඩිය වගේද තාම අර කුණු හොය ඉන්න තැන දින්නේ. නෑ දැන් එව්ව හැදිලා දැන් එව්ව එහෙම ගොඩාක් කරන්නේ. ගොඩක් පිරිසිදුයි සිතුවිලි. එහෙනම් ලොකු කාම්නස් එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. හිත දුවන්න බෑ හතර වටේ. ගොඩක් ඉමෝෂන්ස් එන්න බෑ. හරි කාම්. එහෙනම් අන්න සප්ත බොජ්ජංග වඩන්න විදර්ශනා වඩන්න කාලය තමුන් තෝරගන්න. තමුන් තමයි තමුන්ව දන්නේ. ඉතින් භාවනාව කියලා කියන්නේ ඒකයි. වාඩි වෙලා අතපය ගොතාගෙන එරමිනිය ගොතාගෙන ඉන්න එකට නෙමෙයි. තමුන්ගේ ලෙඩේ தත්ත්වය තෝරගන්න ඕනේ. කොයි හරියද තියෙන්නේ self diagnosis එක කරලා එතනින් නම් බේත් කරන් යනවා. ඉතින් මේක මේ තනියම යන ගමනක් self diagnosis එකත් එක්ක self treatment. ඒ නිසා තමයි සම්‍යක් දෘෂ්ටියෙන් පටන් ගත යුත්තේම ඕනේ. එහෙම නැත්තම් අරයා කියන එක අහනවා, මෙයා කියන එක අහනවා, අර හාමුදුරුවෝ කියන එක, මේ ගුරුවරයා කියන එක, අර පොතේ තියෙන එක ඔක්කොම try කර කර ඉන්නවා අන්ධ විදියට තමුන් දන්නේ. ඉතින් හැමදාම ගිහිල්ලා අහනවා දැන් මම මොකද්ද කරන්න ඕන බාව? දැන් මම මොකද්ද කරන්නේ? දැන් මං කොහෙද ඉන්නේ? සෝවන් සර්ටිෆිකේට්. එහෙනම් මම සෝවන් වෙලාද? ඔන්න දැන් ඉතින් ඕන්න ඔහම ගුරුවරයාට ඕන විදියට යනවා. ගුරුවරයාත් යන්නේ හරි පාරද නැද්ද දන්නේ නැහැ. ගෝලයා යන්නේත් කොහෙද කියලා දන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතින් ඔබ කර කර ඉන්නවා. අන්තිම හුස්ම යනකම්. ඔය ප්‍රශ්න මොකක්වත් නැහැ. තමුන් සම්මිය දෘෂ්ටියට එනවා නම් තමුන් සම්මිය දෘෂ්ටිය ඉඳන් ගමන පටන් ගත්තා නම් තමුන් ඇස් දෙක අරගෙන යන්නේ කාටවත් මුලා කරන්න බෑ. අධර්මයක් කවුරු හරි කියලා දෙනවා නම් එයාට ටක් ගාලා තේරෙනවා මේ ධර්මයේ මුලැමැදාකට ගැලපෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. මේක ගැලපෙන්නේ ආර්ය අෂ්ටාංගික මාර්ගයටවත් පටිච්ච සමුප්පාදයටවත් චතුරාර්ය සත්‍යයටවත් මුලැමැදාක කොහෙටවත් ගැලපෙන්නේ නැහැ. එහෙනම් මේක ධර්මයක් නෙමෙයි. මේ බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේ කියලා දීපෙක නෙමෙයි. මෙයා මේ වැරදියට තේරුම් ගන්න කියලා. ඒක හලලා ගත යුත් අරගෙන තමුන් දන්නවා හරි පාරේ යන්න. අද මේ මිනිස්සු මෙච්චර නොමග යවන්නේ මායя නොමග යවන්නේ සම්‍යක් දෘෂ්ටිය නැති නිසා. ඉතින් මේකට පිළියම් කරගන්න ඕනේ භාවහාම සම්‍යක් දෘෂ්ටිය වඩා ගන්න. ඒකටයි මහන්සි වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒක තමයි. ඒකට භාවනාව කියලා කියන්නේ අතපය හතර අකුලන් ඉන්න ගන්න මේ කල්යාණ මිත්‍ර සේවනයේ සද්ධර්ම ශ්‍රවණය කරගන්න එක තමයි මුල්ම එක. ඒ තුලින් යථාර්ථය අවබෝධ කරගන්න. එතනින් ගමන පටන් ගන්න. ඒක තමයි භාවනාව. ඉතින් අද දවසේ ගොඩක් දේවල් කියලා දුන්නා, හිතන්න දේවල් කියලා දුන්නා. කරගන්න පුළුවන් ද මන් දන්නේ. දැන් නිදාගෙන ඉන්න අය චෙක් කරගෙන එනකොට වටිනා පොයින්ට් එකක් කියපු හින්දා එතනින් මම නැවතුණා. හැබැයි දැන් නම් අනික් කට්ටිය ඇහැරිලා ඇති කියලා මං හිතනවා. Anyway, do you all have any question? I see you, Dinali. Do you have any questions? Were you there in the morning?
Yes, I was, meaning answer.
You were there in the morning?
Yes, I was.
Good. So you are here the whole day. So tell me, what did you learn? Is there any questions you want to ask?
No questions as such at the moment, but I found both sessions very interesting. And just one or two things that I learned from, especially from that the scientific explanation of neuroplasticity, I think makes you realize that you have the capacity for salvation in yourself.
Yes.
And that, and I also found it very interesting when they said that, and I think that it goes with everything that the Dhamma says as well, that you have to embrace difficulty as well, not to run away from it. I'm just speaking from a personal point of view that we often run away from things, but you need to face them and accept them, and that's when you can actually empower yourself and kind of make it not a worthwhile experience, but to deal with it in a positive way. That's what I took away from today's sessions.
Very good, very good, very good. Yes, so the whole point is, yes, we have the potential to free ourselves from suffering. That's what Buddha said. But it will not come naturally. It is not a natural thing to happen. We have to put the effort. We have to exercise. We have to develop. Then we can. So that's why the Noble Eightfold Path is there. So if you practice that, definitely we can attain full enlightenment. So what you said is true. So when we face things in the world, either we avoid or we go into conflict or we react. But the whole point of learning the Dhamma is to, now why I'm showing this scientific things are because even though some people don't like, but you can see how important it is for you to know. So you get the inspiration, you get the strength, and you know your capacity, so you can do it. And this is what Buddha pointed out. You need to learn to face the world, face the circumstances, favorable or unfavorable, whether you like or not, but still to be able to interpret it in the wholesome way, using that Nekkhamma vitharka, vyapada vitharka, himsa vitharka. Then only you will have salvation. Otherwise, no salvation. If you are still going with the wanting to please the senses, developing ill will and developing cruel thoughts, no salvation. But if you learn to interpret your circumstances by using the letting go method and developing unconditional loving kindness, developing compassion, there is salvation. That's the path to salvation. That is Samma Sankappa. So that is what in the West they call the positive thinking. We call it the wholesome thinking. So if you can train and do that, we have the salvation. We can get that. True.
Thank you for the clarification, Bhikshunal Hanson.
Welcome. So Chaminda is there. Are you there with us? What about Gayani Veerasekara?
I am there, Bhikkhuni. I am the one who asked that question on Atasil and all that. So,
Very good. So for how long you are going to keep the Atasilna?
I'll work on it. I'm not going to push myself too much, but gradually I need to get onto it. So I'll just see. I'm not going to set targets. I'm going to work on it, Bhikkhuni.
Good, good, good. But you see the value, no?
Yes, Bhikkhuni. Yes.
Very good, very good. Yeah, that's a good approach. It's because it should come naturally. So more you, that's why it's important for you all to listen to the Dhamma talks and deepen the understanding. Then the understanding will do the job. So you don't have to force. The mature understanding will let go of this lesser kind of, holding on to the lesser kind of happinesses and the wrong habits and things like that. So this is why at the beginning, what you all have to do is keep listening to the good Dhamma talks, not here and there and everything what you can hear, but good ones. Where there's capacity for you to open your eyes. So then get your eyes open, then walk. You can walk. Then it will come naturally. Giving up this wanting to please this, that, and the other, and these ill thoughts and the cruel thoughts and all that, then it becomes very difficult to hold on to them or to have them. You will feel like, you, because you start to see it association with the suffering, with the stress. So you will not develop them. So there will be an inner transformation. So listen more and more to the Dhamma talks. And then naturally you will be like a Sillamma. You don't have to change anything. You can be where you are, but from your heart, from your mind and your thoughts, speech, actions, everything will align with your understanding towards that Samma path. More and more you will having peace of mind and happiness. So I wish you all the good luck and hope that you all can, continue Atasil at least maybe, once a week, then few days a week, and then it will become a natural thing. I actually got few people to come together here because their mother was sick and to help her. She has never taken Atasilවත් any දෙයක් මොකක්වත් කරලා නැහැ. ඉතින් ඔය කාලා බීලා නටලා ජොලි කරලා ඉඳලා දැන් ලෙඩ වුණාම තමයි රත් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ඉතින් මං කිව්වා හැමෝටම මේවා කියලා දෙදි තේරෙනවනේ. අපි දැන් මේ ටිකේ දැන් අම්මගේ අන්තිම ජීවිත කාලය යන්නේ ડોක්ටර්ස්ලා දැන් පැලවිටිව් කෙයා අන්තිම සති ටික ඉන්නේ. අන්තිම දවස් ටික අන්තිම පැය ටික මං කිව්වා දැන්වත් අපි සිල්වත් වෙයිමු ඉතින් කියලා. දැන් ගෙදර ටීවී එක දාන්නේ නැහැ. ටීවී එක දානවා නම් දාන්නේ බණ අහන්න. දැන් සතියක් කෙරුවා ඊට පස්සේ මම මේ සතියත් ගිහිල්ලා ඒක දික් කරලා ආවා මේ සතිය ගියාම අනේ මේ ඉන්නවස පුදුම සැනසෙල්ලක් මේ නිවුස් අහන්න නැති එකම පුදුම සැනසෙල්ලක් කිව්වා හරිම සැනසෙල්ලයි මම එහෙනම් කැමතිද තව සතිය ඕ මේ ඉන්නවස මේ කට්ටිය වටසිල් අරගෙන ඉන්නවා නේ වැඩපල කරගෙන තම තමුන්ගේ වැඩත් කරගෙන අම්මවත් බලාගෙන ඒක තමයි වෙන්න ඕනේ මේක natural වෙන්න ඕනේ එදිනෙදා ජීවිතේ ඉඳන්ම කරගෙන යන්න පුළුවන් තැනට එනකන් අපි සරල වුණා නම් සැහැල්ලු වුණා නම් මේ අවබෝධයෙන් ආවන වැඩේ කොච්චර ලේසිද මෙච්චර මාන්සි වෙන්න ඕනේ so I wish you all the best that you all be able to continue to keep the precepts and move forward so you can experience the benefit from that and then teach others. iPhone data dari, are you there? There's someone iPhone Sita. Yes. We can see you are talking, but we can't hear. I think there's a problem with the volume. In the mic, there is a problem, I think, with the iPhone data dari. N. Pereira, there's iPhone Sita. Do you all have anything you all would like to discuss? Say. No? Okay. All right. Then, do you have anything to say, Sahanipute?
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Bhikshuni Hanson. No, I think it's been a very informative and, because we were engaged for a long period, naturally, we kept our careless defilements at bay. So that's a wonderful opportunity we got throughout the day. But just even if some were listening in the background, still nevertheless part of the attention at least was focused here. So I think that's something better than nothing on a day like this. So much merit to you for giving us this opportunity. And thank you for everybody also for participating and for the questions. And we wish you a very good evening, whatever is left of it. It must be very late there for you, Bhikkhuni Hanson. I hope you're not too tired. It's 9:45, no? Yes. So maybe we can wind up for today.
Okay, yes, we can. Okay, so thank you very much for joining. And today is the Durutu Poya Day. The Lord Buddha came to Sri Lanka for the first time, after his enlightenment after 9 months. He got enlightened in May. So January, he came to Sri Lanka and there was this dispute with the Naga Gotrika and the Yaksha Gotrika in somewhere in Mayangana. Mahanaga Kiyanu. So they were about to fight. So Buddha came and helped them to solve the issue. So they were very happy. It is in that meeting, Saman Deviya was there. So at that time, the Sinhala, Sivhele, means there were four අපි කියමුකෝ අද කාස්ට් කියනවා වගේ ඒ දවස්වල 4 වර්ගයක් හිටියා යක්ඛ රාක්ඛ නාග දේව කියලා. ඒ යක්ඛ කියලා නම් කෙරුවේ the people who are working hard. යට ගිහිල්ලා යපස් ගෙනල්ලා ලෝහ වලින් වැඩ කරලා අය කාගෙන වැඩ කරන යකා වගේ කියන්නේ ඒක අතාරින්නේ මහන්සිලා. මේ ඔක්කොමලාගෙම හිත දියුණු කච්චිය. මෙයාලා තමයි ලංකාවේ ඉඳලා තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට නැත්තම් යකුරලකට ඇවිල්ලා බණ කියයි බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේ. ඉතින් ඒ හිත දියුණු කච්චිය. So යක්ක කච්චිය වැඩ කරගෙන හිටිය මහන්සිලා කර්මාන්ත කෙරුවා. රාක්ක කච්චිය රකුස් කියලා කියන්නේ කුස රකින්න අය. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ ගොවිතැන. ගොවිතැන් බත් කරලා කුඹුරු කරලා කන්න බොන්න හොයලා හදලා දීපු අය. නාග කියලා කියන්නේ නාවිකයෝ මේ නාග මූද ආශ්‍රිතේ මූද සම්පත් මුල් කරගෙන මූද රැකගෙන මූද මුල් කරගෙන යාලා ජීවිකාව ගෙනිච්චා එක්කෙනාට උදව් කරා. දෙවියෝ කියලා කියන්නේ එයාලා තමයි ස්පිරිචුවල් ප්‍රැක්ටිසස් කියලා දුන්නේ. එයාලා තමයි ඉගැන්වුවේ. එයාලා හිටියේ උස තැන්වල. ඔය සමන් දෙවියෝ හිටපු තැන තමයි සිරීපාද කියන්නේ. එයාගේ ගෙදර හරි ආධ්‍යාත්මික පාසල හරි මොනස්ට්‍රික හරි ඒ ආශ්‍රමික හරි තිබිලා තියෙන සිරීපාද. ඉතින් ඔය මයංගනේදී අර ඩිස්පියුට් එක විසඳුවාට පස්සේ ඒ එතන අහගෙන හිටපු ඒ දේශනා කරපු අහගෙන හිටපු සමන් දෙවියොන්ට තේරුණා ධර්මය. සෝවාන් වුණා කියන්නේ ඒකයි. ඒතර සෝවාන් වුණාට පස්සේ පැහැදිලා ඉල්ල ගන්නවා බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේගෙන් අපිට ඔබ වහන්සේ මේ නැතිකොට වන්දනා කරන්න දෙයක් දෙන්න කියලා පූජනීයත්වෙන් තියාගන්න. ඉතින් බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේ මෙහෙම කේශ ධාතු ටිකක් අරන් දෙනවා. ඒක තැම්පත් කළ තමයි මයංගන චෛත්‍ය හදලා තියෙන්නේ. එතනට ගිහිල්ලා බලන්න එනර්ජි එක. There's enormous energy there because there's a lot of today the divine angels are there, the devas. But those days Saman Devi also was like the yakka raka naga deva. සිව්හෙලේ එක කොටසක් ඔය විජය කුමාරයා එනකොට හිටියා කියන්නේ හම්බ වෙලා තියෙන ඔය කට්ටියකින් යක්ක කියන අයව. අපි කියන්නේ කුවේණි කියන්නේ යකින්නියක් කියලා. කියන්නේ යක්ක අයගේ නෝනා female. ඉතින් අපි ඔය මේ පින්තූරවල දකින මේ ලේ පෙරාගෙන ඉන්න යක්කුණන් කුවේණි ලස්සන්ට ඇඳගෙන ආභරණත් දාගෙන ඉඳලා තියෙන අනිකේ කපු කැට ඉඳලා තියෙන මේ ගාමන්ට් ෆැක්ටරිස් අද තියෙනවා වගේ ගාමන්ට් එකක් හද ඉඳලා තියෙන කපු කැටලා යක්කුන්ට ඕනේ ඊටත් වඩා රාජකුමාරයෙක් යාළුවේ යකෙක් එක්ක යකිනියක් එක්ක so they were very highly developed beings. ඉතින් හැම පැත්තෙම ඒ කපු කැට හිටියා කියන්නේ ඒක ඇඳුම් ඇඳගෙන ලස්සනට ආභරණ දාලා ඒ ආභරණ හොරා අරන් ගියයි කියන්නේ පස්සේ. ඉතින් ඔටුනු දාලා එහෙම හිටපුවා ඒ කියන්නේ සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම හොඳ දියුණු ගෝත්‍ර. ඇබ්‍රිජිනීස්ලා වගේ එහෙම නෙමෙයි. ඊට වඩා මේ අද කාලේ ඉන්න අයට වඩා ඇත්තටම දියුණු මනුස්ස වර්ගයක්. මොකද එයාලා කරලා තියෙන වැඩ අපිට තාම කරන්න බැරි වෙලා තියෙනවා. එයාලගේ ඥානය අපිට ළඟ තාම නැහැ. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි පල්ලහැට වැටලා දැන්. ඉතින් එහෙම යක්ක රාක්ක නාග දේව කියලා ඉතින් සමන් දෙවියෝ බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේට ආරාධනා කරනවා මේ අනේ මගේ විමානෙටත් ඇවිල්ලා යන්න මගේ මොනස්ට්‍රිකට ආශ්‍රමයකටත් ඇවිල්ලා ආශිර්වාද කරලා යන්න කියලා. ඉතින් බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේ සිරීපාදටත් වඩිනවා. ඒ ආපු ගමන පළවෙනි පාරම අර ඩිස්පියුට් එක බේරලා සිරීපාදෙටත් වැඩලා තමයි ආපහු ඉන්දියාවට වඩින්නේ. ඕක තමයි අද වෙච්ච ලොකුම හිස්ටොරිකල් ඉවෙන්ට් එක ලංකාවට වැදගත් වෙන්නේ. ඒ වගේ දවසක තමයි අද මේ අය මේ දවස ඩෙඩිකේට් කරලා ඉතින් ධර්මයේ ඉගෙන ගත්තා. ඉතින් ධර්මයේ තුලින් තමයි මේක ඇඟට ගත්තොත් තමයි බුදුන් දකින්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ. ඒ ධර්මය ඇඟට ගත්තොත් අපිට පුළුවන් ස්ට්‍රෙස් නැති කරගෙන සැනසෙල්ල ජීවත් වෙන්න රහත් වෙන තැනට එන්න. ඉතින් ඒ අපේ ඇන්සෙස්ටර්ස්ලා තමයි. එක්කෙනෙක් තමයි සමන් දෙවියෝ. ලංකාවේ හිටපු. ඉතින් මේවා මේ ක්‍රොනිකල්ස් වල තියෙන ඒවානේ. එතකොට ඒ සමන් දෙවියෝ මේ බණ අහනකොට සෝවන් වෙලා තියෙනවා. බලන්න කොච්චර මොලයක් තිබිලා තියෙනවද අපේ මුතුන් මිත්තන්ට. අද තමයි සමන් දෙවියෝ ඒ සමන් දෙවියෝ කියන මනුස්ස ස්වරූපයෙන් ඉඳලා මැරිලා ගියාට පස්සේ දැනුත් අද දෙවියෝ කියලා කියන්නේ දෙන අය, හොඳ අය. අනික් අය බලා ගන්න අය. ඉතින් ඒ ජීවත් වෙලා ඉඳිත් අනික් අයට උදව් කරලා අනික් අය බලාගෙන අනික් අයට පිළිහිටලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් මැරුණාට පස්සෙත් කට්ටිය බිලීව් කරා ඒ ක්ලෑන් එකේ හිටපු ප්‍රධානියා සමන් දෙවියෝ. අදටත් අපි දිහා බලනවා කියලා ඉතින් සමන් දේවාලි කියලා හදලා එහෙම කරනවා. ඉතින් ඒ ඇවිල්ලා අපිට තියෙන්නේ ඒ ලේ ඒ කට්ටියගේ. මම කිව්වේ බුදුබණ අහලා සෝවන් වුණා. බුදුබණ අහලා ආර්ය මාර්ගයට ආවා. ඒතර මිහිඳු ආමුදුරුව මෙහෙට එනකොට බුදුබණ අහලා සෝවාන් වෙලා හිටපු පිරිසක් ලංකාවේ ඉඳලා තියෙනවා ඔල්රෙඩි. නමුත් එච්චරම මිහිඳු ආමුදුරුව ඇවිල්ලා මේක ප්‍රතිස්ථාපනය කරපු තරමටම මම හිතන්නේ ප්‍රචලිත වෙලා මුල් බැහැගෙන තියෙන නැතුව ඇති. හැබැයි මේ සමන් දෙවියන්ගේ කතාවෙන් තේරෙනවා it was there. සෝවාන් වෙච්ච කෙනෙක් නිකන් ඉන්නේ නැහනේ. අනික් අය බණ කියන අනික එක ගුරුවරයෙක්. සමන් දෙවියෝ කියන්නේ අධ්‍යාත්මයේ වඩාගත්තු ආධ්‍යාත්මික ප්‍රැක්ටිසස් කියලා දීපු ගුරුවරයෙක්. දේව කියලා කිව්වේ ඒ කාලේ යාලට. දේව කියන අය තමයි ඉගැන්නුවේ. දේවකාරිය කියලා ඒ ස්පිරිචුවල් පැත්ත ඉගැන්නුවේ. ඉතින් අපේ අයට ගොඩාක් මොලේ තියෙනවා ලේවල මේක තියෙනවා මේ ධර්මයේ තේරුම් ගන්න පුළුවන් හැකියාව. ඉතින් උත්සාහ කරන්න මෙවැනි දවසක තමයි ලංකාවෙන් කෙනෙක් ඒ පළවෙනියට සෝවාන් වුණා කියන අපිට හොයාගන්න තියෙන්නේ. ඉතින් මේ ධර්මයේ අද දවසම අහන්න ප්‍රැක්ටිස් කරන්න. ඒක තමයි ප්‍රැක්ටිස් එක. නැතුව වාඩි වෙලා නිදාගෙන ඉන්න එක නෙමෙයි. මෙහෙම කල්යාණ මිත්‍ර සේවනය කරලා පරිතෝගෝස අහලා ස්තමුන් යෝනිසෝ මානසිකාරය කරලා ධම්මානුධම්ම ප්‍රතිපදාවට දාලා ප්‍රැක්ටිස් කරගන්න. එතකොට අනිවාර්යෙන් බුදුරජාන් වහන්සේ තාම ජීවමානයි. මේ ධර්මයේ ජීවමානයි කියන්නේ බුදුරජාන් වහන්සේ ජීවමානයි. ඒ කාලය තුලදී මේකෙන් ප්‍රයෝජනයක් අරගෙන රහත් වෙන්න බලන්න. අපි දන්නේ කොයි වෙලේ අපේ හුස්ම යයිද, කොයි වෙලේ මේ ධර්මයේ තුරන් වෙන තැනට මේ ශාසනය පිරිහෙයිද කියලා අපි දන්නේ. දැනට හොඳට තියෙනවා. තේනම් දැන් හයිය අරගන්න, වීරිය වඩලා. නිකම් මේක කරන්න බෑ. දැන් දැක්කනේ මොලෙත් එක්ක නිකන් සෙල්ලම් කරන්න බෑ. මෙතන බරපතල ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා වය වෙලා තියෙන විදියම. ඒක රිවර්ස් කරගන්න සෑහෙන වෙර වීරිය දාලා මහන්සි වෙන්න ඕනේ. කොන්ෂස්ලි හිතන ක්‍රමය වෙනස් කරගන්න. ඉතින් අද ඉඳලා ඒක කරගන්න, අද ඉඳලා ධර්මානුකූලව හැසිරෙන්න ගන්න, ජීවත් වෙන්න ගන්න. අපිට වරදින්නේ නැහැ. අපිට පුළුවන් වේවි මේ ධර්මයෙන් පිහිටක් ලබාගෙන අනික් අයටත් පිහිට වෙන තැනට එන්න. ඒක තමයි අද කාලේ වෙන්න ඕන. ශාසනය රැක ගන්න නම් ඔක තමයි අපි අද කරන්නේ. ඉතින් හොඳයි, අපි ආශිර්වාද කරනවා මේ හැම දිනාටම බුද්ධ ධම්ම සංඝ යන තුනුරුවනේ අනන්ත ප්‍රමාණ වූ ගුණානුභාව බලයෙන් දෙවියන්ගේ ආශිර්වාදයෙන් රැකවරණේ සියලු රැකවරණේ මේ අයට ලැබේවා. ගුණේ නුවණ වැඩිවීමට අවශ්‍ය කරන ශක්තිය ධෛර්යය වඩා ගැනීමට හැකි වේවා. මේක කරගෙන යන්න උදව් උපකාර කරන මේ වැඩසටහන කරන් යන්න උදව් උපකාර කරන අපේ සෝහන් පුතාටත් ඒ වගේම මේ පවුලේ සෑම සිළු දිනාටත් ඒ වගේම මේට සහභාගී වෙන්න යෙදුණු ඔබ සෑම සිළු දිනාටමත් මේ පින් අනුභවයෙන් සත සාන්තියක්ම වේවා. නිදුක් නිරෝගී භාවයේ දීර්ඝායුෂ තිර ජීවනයේ පිණසම මේ පින් හේතු වාසනා වේවා. කරන කියන කටයුතු සියලු සම්‍යක් බලාපොරොත්තු සර්ව ප්‍රකාරයෙන්ම සාර්ථක වේවා. අවසානයේදී උතුම් චතුරාර්ය සත්‍ය ධර්ම අවබෝධයෙන් උතුම් නිවනින් සැනසීම පිණිසම මේ සියලු පින් හේතු වාසනා වේවා. අභිවාදන සීලිස නිච්ඡං බුද්ධා පචායිනෝ චත්තාරෝ ධම්මා වඩ්ඩಂತಿ ආයුර්ණෝ සුඛං බලං ආයුරාෝග්‍ය සම්පatti සග්ග සම්පatti මේවච අතෝ නිබ්බාන සම්පatti ඉමිනාතේ සමෙච්චතු. ඒ වගේම අපි මේ පින් අනුමෝදන් කරමු. සියලුම සම්‍යක් දෘෂ්ටික දෙවි දේවතාවුන්ටත් සියලු අපේ නමින් මිය පරලොව යන්චිත ඥාතිත මිත්‍රාදී සමූහයාටත් සියලු සත්වයන්ටත් මේ පින් අනුභවයෙන් සත සාන්තියක් වේවා. ඉන්නා වූ තැනක සිට මානසික සුවය සහනය සැනසීම ළඟා කරගනිත්වා. අවසානයේ අතුතුම් නිවනින්ම සැනසීවා කියලා ප්‍රාර්ථනා කරමු. ඒ වගේම අපි ප්‍රාර්ථනාවක් කරගනිමු සසර වසනාතුරු නිවන් දක්නාතුරු පාප මිත්‍රාශ්‍රයෙන් මිදී කල්යාණ මිත්‍රාශ්‍රය ලැබීම පිණිසත් සියලුම ආශ්‍රව දුරු කරන ඥානය ලබාගෙන සියලු දුකින් මිදී උතුම් නිවනින් සැනසීම පිණිසත් මේ සියලු පින් අප සෑම සියලු දෙනාටම හේතු වාසනා වේවා කියලා ප්‍රාර්ථනා කරගන්න. තෙරුවන් සරණයි. ඉතින් භාවනා කරන එක කන්ටිනියු කරන්න. එක්ක ධර්ම දේශනා අහන්න, එක්ක තමුන් තනියම රිෆ්ලෙක්ට් කරන්න. අර තමුන් ඉන්න තැන තෝරගෙන වැඩ ටික කරගෙන යන්න. හෙට වෙනකම්.
There's a message that has come. Just sharing from Dr. Arundhati, I think. I want to make sure it's the correct person. Just sharing something that happened on my journey. I used to promptly seal Pavarana at 6:30 p.m. in my 20s. Gradually, with meeting Kalyana Mitras like Venerable Bhikkhuni and from retreats with other Venerable monks, I now observe still for 24 hours. So for start, continue. Sorry, my mouse is continue this program. Much merit. It's from Anagarika Dharma Lata, not from Doctor. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing.
Good. Okay. So
Thanks, everyone, sir.
okay. I will put that last week session that I'm explaining this video to your WhatsApp group. Okay.
Okay, Vishnu. Thank you. Teruvan Saranai. May you be well and happy. Teruvan Saranai.
Bye.
Saranai Venerable.
Teruvan
Teruvan
Saranai.
Saranai. More merits for everybody. Take care. Teruvan Saranai.
Bye.
Teruvan Saranai.
Okay, I will end the program now.
Okay, Teruvan Saranai.